Hunter Sung Jinwoo arrived at the funeral, dressed in a black suit, immediately drawing the attention of reporters who began snapping photos. The ceremony was held to honor the hunters who had perished in the Jeju Island raid, a mission that had captured the nation's attention. This raid had marked Sung Jinwoo's first mission since being re-evaluated as an S-rank hunter, making it his public debut. The world had watched in awe as he defeated the fearsome Ant King while his summoned creatures handled the relentless ant horde. The mission's success became a major event, with people flocking to the internet to discuss every detail. Sung Jinwoo's name was on everyone's lips, praised for his extraordinary strength. Yet, not all the comments were positive. Some criticized him, speculating that if he had joined the raid earlier, fewer lives might have been lost. Though many supported him, the shadow of those lost lives loomed large, and the criticism lingered. Under the overcast sky, Sung Jinwoo stood before the memorial, his face reflecting the somber mood as he paid his respects to the brave hunters who had fallen during the raid. The atmosphere was thick with grief, and the white flowers scattered around the memorial silently spoke of the sacrifices made. Mourners gathered, united in their sorrow. Among them, Baek, filled with emotion after the loss of his friend Byung-gyu, approached Jinwoo. Baek had always believed no single person could end a war, but after witnessing the events of the raid, he reconsidered. Despite the tragedy, he acknowledged that Jinwoo had ended the nightmare on Jeju Island. A total of 4,801 hunters, along with 727 awakened civilians, had participated in the 5th Jeju Island raid. Though 64 awakened beings and 32 civilians lost their lives, the casualty count was the lowest compared to the previous 4 attempts, marking a bittersweet victory. Later, Sung Jinwoo sat with President Go Gun-hee to discuss his future plans. As an S-rank hunter, Jinwoo didn't need the usual process to become a guild master. President Go explained that one phone call to the Hunters Association would suffice to establish his guild. Jinwoo considered this, thinking it might be worth looking into the benefits of being an S-rank hunter. During their conversation, President Go brought up an odd incident on Jeju Island. Soldiers and hunters, sent to clean up the aftermath of the raid, had mysteriously lost consciousness on the island. This included A and B rank hunters from the Knights Guild. Go wondered if Jinwoo had placed some sort of magical barrier that he had forgotten about. Jinwoo, confused, clarified that he hadn't done anything like that. President Go believed him, but was left puzzled, as those affected had no memory of what happened before they blacked out. The association was at a loss, unsure whether it had been a trap set by the ants or something else entirely. Their conversation was cut short when an association employee approached to inform President Go of an early arriving guest. Apologizing to Jinwoo, Go excused himself, and Jinwoo, not bothered, decided to leave. Just as he was about to get into his car, a voice called out to him. Jinwoo turned to see a man approaching, introducing himself as Adam White, a senior official from the Federal Bureau of Hunters. Jinwoo was surprised, as he had never had any dealings with the Bureau before. Adam explained that it had been hard to track Jinwoo down, even stopping by his office. This reminded Jinwoo of something Jinho had mentioned about a man giving him a card. Curious, Jinwoo asked why Adam wanted to meet him. Adam revealed that he had important information to share. Information no other country or institution could provide, except the Bureau. Jinwoo was intrigued, but wondered why they would share such valuable knowledge with him. Adam explained that the Bureau benefited from working with special individuals like Jinwoo. Impressed by Jinwoo's performance during the Jeju Island raid, the Bureau's deputy director wanted to meet with him personally. Adam offered to take Jinwoo to meet the deputy director. Though skeptical, Jinwoo agreed to consider it. As he opened his car door, he expressed his doubts about the reliability of the information. But Adam then mentioned something that stopped Jinwoo in his tracks: an upgrader. According to Adam, an upgrader was an awakened being who could enhance the abilities of other awakened individuals. This piqued Jinwoo's interest, and he agreed to ride with Adam to meet the deputy director. Arriving at their destination, Jinwoo was introduced to Michael Connor, the Deputy Director of the Federal Bureau of Hunters. Connor wasted no time, presenting Jinwoo with immigration documents that promised instant American citizenship if he accepted. However, Jinwoo was more focused on the information about the upgrader. Connor confirmed that such a person existed and called for her to enter. A middle-aged woman named Norma Selner walked in. Connor introduced her as the world's only upgrader, someone capable of enhancing an awakened being's abilities. Jinwoo immediately sensed she was a unique type of awakened being. Ms. Selner explained her abilities, noting Jinwoo's initial skepticism. She acknowledged that most people doubted her power at first, but assured him that once they experienced it, they would believe. She explained that every awakened being had limits to their strength, and without a second awakening, they couldn't surpass those limits. However, she could help them break through these limitations in a 3-stage process. Connor confirmed her claims, adding that Ms. Selner could only help a few individuals per year due to the toll her power took on her. Jinwoo considered the weight of her abilities. If true, they were extraordinary. When Jinwoo asked how effective the process was, Ms. Selner explained that it varied from person to person, but typically resulted in a 20 to 30% increase in strength after all 3 stages were completed. This revelation shocked Jinwoo. He now understood why powerful hunters like Hwang Dong-soo had moved to America, despite the public backlash. Such an opportunity was too good to pass up for any hunter. Jinwoo realized that if news of Ms. Selner's abilities got out, it could cause chaos. Connor, aware of this concern, assured Jinwoo that they safeguarded Ms. Selner and compensated her well in exchange for her services to select hunters. The Bureau wanted to extend this rare gift to Sung Jinwoo, recognizing the profound impact her abilities could have on someone as powerful as him. Sung Jinwoo weighed the offer carefully, reflecting on the so-called gift that Michael Connor and Norma Selner were proposing. Connor assured him that if he joined the Federal Bureau of Hunters, he would be given top priority, preferential treatment, and assistance in securing the best possible contract with any guild he chose. Norma Selner added that there was no rush to make a decision. They were merely presenting what they could offer. Still, Jinwoo remained skeptical, questioning why he would receive such a valuable service for nothing. Both Connor and Selner reiterated that this was a complimentary gesture of goodwill, aimed at forging a relationship with someone of his caliber. Jinwoo remembered Selner's earlier confidence, how she had claimed he would be desperate for more once he experienced her abilities. With a gentle touch, Selner took Jinwoo's wrist, smiling as she beckoned him closer. She instructed him to look into her eyes as she began the first step of her process. Connor, watching closely, felt a sense of satisfaction. He believed Jinwoo had taken the bait. In his mind, once the first stage was complete, Jinwoo would be eager for more and might even sign the papers on the spot. But something unexpected happened. As Selner locked eyes with Jinwoo, her world suddenly plunged into darkness. Panicking, she searched for light, but saw nothing until a shadow emerged, creeping toward her. Its presence was overwhelming, and when it opened its eyes and stared directly into hers, terror gripped her heart. Selner screamed, stumbling backward and falling from her chair, utterly consumed by fear. The 2 agents guarding her reacted instantly, drawing their guns and pointing them at Jinwoo, their panic evident. Michael Connor, horrified by their rashness, immediately stepped in, shouting at the agents to lower their weapons. He reminded them of who they were dealing with, warning that if they had acted like this towards someone like Thomas Andre or Liu Zhigong, they wouldn't have lived to regret it. Realizing their mistake, the agents hastily holstered their weapons and rushed to assist the trembling Selner. Connor bowed deeply to Jinwoo, apologizing profusely for the reckless actions of his men. Jinwoo, still processing the surreal event, assured him it was fine. Meanwhile, Connor berated the agents, making sure they understood the gravity of their actions. Shaken and fearful, the agents could only acknowledge their fault, aware of how badly things could have gone. As the situation calmed, Michael knelt beside the visibly shaken Norma Selner, who was drenched in sweat and trembling. Concerned for her well-being, he asked if she was feeling unwell. Realizing the severity of her condition, Michael decided it would be best to reschedule the meeting with Sung Jinwoo. Jinwoo, intrigued by what had just transpired, agreed to leave, and Michael instructed Adam White to escort him out. After Jinwoo exited, Michael remained alone with Norma, desperate to understand the cause of the unsettling scene. He leaned in closer, his face full of concern, and asked her what had gone wrong. Still visibly shaken, Norma pressed her hand to her chest, struggling to catch her breath before she finally spoke. She revealed something astonishing. Jinwoo was no ordinary hunter. Norma described Jinwoo as a king, but not just any king, a being far more powerful than anything she had ever encountered. Michael's eyes widened in disbelief at her revelation. Could this mean Jinwoo was as strong as a national-level hunter? Michael pressed her for an answer. But Norma, still trembling, explained that it wasn't something as simple as raw strength. She admitted she had never experienced anything like it before. When she gazed into Jinwoo, something beyond him stared back at her. It wasn't Jinwoo himself, but rather an unfathomable darkness within him, an infinite, terrifying presence that had stared directly into her soul. The experience left her deeply unsettled. Before ending the conversation, she gave Michael one last critical piece of information. There was no limit to Jinwoo's power. Meanwhile, at the Hunter Association, Chairman Go Gun-hee sat alone, deeply troubled. He was reflecting on recent events, especially the tragic death of Hunter Min Byung-gyu during the Jeju Island raid. Though Min Byung-gyu had retired, his sacrifice weighed heavily on Go Gun-hee's heart. The realization that the future might bring even more sacrifices filled him with a growing sense of dread. As Go Gun-hee sat lost in thought, his phone rang, snapping him out of his reflection. When he answered, an urgent voice on the other end informed him that a B-rank gate had opened up in the middle of a busy road. Go Gun-hee's eyes widened in alarm. A B-rank gate wasn't something an ordinary hunter squad could handle, and it required immediate attention. He began considering which of the major guilds to call in, but then he remembered Hunter Sung Jinwoo had recently opened an office near the area. Meanwhile, Jinwoo was driving along a congested road, lost in thought. He was still trying to make sense of what had happened during his meeting with Norma Selner. He knew she had been terrified, but he couldn't quite grasp what exactly she had seen in him. As he pondered, his phone buzzed in his pocket. Glancing at the caller ID, he saw it was Go Gun-hee, chairman of the Hunter Association. Curious, Jinwoo answered the call. Gun-hee's voice was filled with urgency as he explained the situation. A B-rank gate had appeared on a main road, causing major traffic disruptions. He asked if Jinwoo could help by taking care of it. Surprised by the request, Jinwoo questioned whether he could intervene without the proper permissions. Go Gun-hee reassured Jinwoo with a light-hearted remark, reminding him that, as chairman of the Hunter Association, he had the authority to grant permission. Jinwoo couldn't help but smile at Gun-hee's playful tone. With the chairman's blessing, Jinwoo stepped out of the van, ready to handle the task at hand. Following the trail of manna, he approached the gate. Reporters had already gathered, their cameras flashing as police and association employees worked to cordon off the area. As Jinwoo neared the portal, a female employee stopped him, demanding to know what he was doing. But her demeanor quickly shifted when she recognized him as an S-rank hunter. Her surprise was apparent, and soon the crowd began to buzz with excitement, realizing Jinwoo was here to handle the situation. Still trying to enforce protocol, the employee reminded him that even as an S-rank, he couldn't just enter the gate without proper authorization and sufficient backup. Sensing that things were getting complicated, Jinwoo calmly made a call to Chairman Go Gun-hee. Handing the phone to the employee, Jinwoo told her to speak to someone she couldn't ignore, the chairman himself. Trembling slightly, the employee spoke with Gun-hee, and after a quick conversation, she gave Jinwoo the go-ahead to proceed. Without hesitation, Jinwoo entered the gate, disappearing from sight. Frustrated by how things had unfolded, the female employee muttered to herself, half-jokingly hoping Jinwoo might trip or hurt himself. But before she could dwell on the thought, screams erupted from the crowd. The once black surface of the gate had turned a chilling blood red. It was a red gate. Fear washed over the crowd as the terrifying sight spread panic, and the employee's heart sank. She wondered if her ill wishes had somehow triggered this disastrous change. A red gate meant the exit would remain sealed until the mission was completed, and anyone trapped inside would have to fight for survival. Inside the gate, Jinwoo felt the shift immediately. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere told him this was no ordinary gate. A red gate was a dangerous place where even the strongest hunters could meet their end. He knew he'd have to push himself harder than ever before to emerge victorious. His thoughts briefly wandered to a recent conversation with his mother. She had expressed her hopes for him, understanding that his awakening as an S-rank hunter had changed everything. She had reminded him of his father, who had once been a firefighter before becoming a hunter. Jinwoo's mother had fallen in love with his father after seeing him risk his life to save others, and she understood that Jinwoo had inherited that same sense of duty and courage. As he prepared himself for the battle ahead, those words echoed in his mind, fueling his resolve. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was living up to the legacy of the man who had come before him. Jinwoo recalled his mother's warning, her gentle reminder to not push himself too hard and to stay cautious. Despite the dangerous path he had chosen, it was a relief knowing she didn't oppose his life as a hunter. Her words echoed in his mind as he readied himself for the battle ahead. "This won't be too much for me," he reassured himself. The battle erupted as Jinwoo's shadow soldiers charged forward, clashing with the swarming magic beasts. Amid the chaos, Jinwoo stood calmly, directing his shadow army with precision and purpose. His soldiers were powerful and relentless, tearing through the ranks of monsters like a well-oiled machine. For Jinwoo, the true challenge of being a hunter wasn't just slaying beasts. It was staying ahead, never allowing the roles to reverse. A hunter could become the hunted in an instant, and Jinwoo understood this harsh reality all too well. Yet he had no intention of stopping. He was not one to falter. With a cold, calculated gaze, he surveyed the battlefield. The first wave of enemies had been utterly crushed, but he knew the real challenge was yet to come. Determined to finish this job quickly, Jinwoo moved forward, ready for whatever lay ahead. Suddenly, the boss of the gate emerged, flanked by his elite guards. His presence radiated authority and confidence as he scanned the battlefield, searching for the intruder who had decimated his forces. The boss spoke, his voice filled with a mix of rage and grudging respect. He had noticed how far this small human had come, slaughtering his people with such ease. And what baffled him even more, this human spoke their language. But his confidence quickly turned into confusion. He called out for his remaining forces, expecting them to close in and surround the intruder. Yet, the only response was silence. The eerie stillness hung in the air, and the boss's eyes darted around in disbelief. He shouted again, demanding his forces appear. But there was nothing, just the oppressive quiet of an empty battlefield. What the boss didn't realize was that Jinwoo's shadow soldiers had already decimated his troops, leaving none to respond. The battlefield was already in Jinwoo's control. Amused by the situation, Jinwoo couldn't help but think to himself, "Small? Now that's funny." With a smirk, he commanded his shadow soldiers to reveal themselves, their forms rising ominously from the ground. The hunt was far from over, and Jinwoo was just getting started. One by one, the magic beasts fell, ambushed by Jinwoo's shadow soldiers who had been lying in wait. Their strikes were swift and precise, cutting down the beasts effortlessly. As Jinwoo surveyed the battlefield, he realized that none of the enemy forces remained. The boss of the magic beasts stood frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend how his once mighty army had been annihilated. Desperation flickered in the boss's eyes as he rolled out his palm, summoning his hidden soldiers from the trees. The ground trembled as the trees broke apart, forming new beasts from their shattered trunks. But before these reinforcements could even take a single step, Baru, one of Jinwoo's most formidable shadow soldiers, moved with lethal precision, sniping off their heads one by one. Jinwoo and his shadow army advanced, their overwhelming presence impossible to ignore. The boss, now gripped by terror, found himself paralyzed, unable to utter a single word. The stark realization of his defeat washed over him as Jinwoo's forces pressed forward. Jinwoo gave the command, and his shadow soldiers surged into action. Leading the charge was Baru, the ant-like soldier whose power sent shockwaves through the battlefield. The remaining magic beasts, sensing the looming threat, lunged forward with all the ferocity they could muster. But they were no match for the shadow army. The battlefield descended into pure chaos as Jinwoo's forces ripped through their enemies with brutal efficiency. No mercy was shown, and the clash grew even more intense. Two towering centaur-like beasts, far more menacing than the rest, charged at Jinwoo with their weapons drawn. But before they could reach him, Tank, Jinwoo's fearsome shadow beast, intercepted them with crushing strength. With a single, violent motion, Tank tore the centaurs apart, adding to the growing carnage on the battlefield. The boss of the magic beasts, witnessing the utter destruction of his army, screamed in agony, calling out for his fallen comrades. His cries were met with silence. Baru, moving at lightning speed, rushed toward him. With a swift strike, Baru's sharp claws pierced through the boss's body. At the same moment, Igris appeared, slashing the boss's arm clean off with a graceful yet deadly motion. The boss collapsed to the ground, fluid pouring from his wounds as he howled in pain. Tusk, one of Jinwoo's powerful shadow mages, activated his skill, Hymn of Giants, growing to an enormous size. Then, using inverse gravity, Tusk slammed the already weakened boss into the ground with immense force. The impact shook the entire battlefield, leaving the boss broken and bleeding, unable to resist any longer. Jinwoo approached the fallen creature, his presence cold and commanding. He looked down at the barely conscious boss and demanded answers. His voice was calm, yet it carried the weight of authority. Jinwoo promised the boss that his suffering would be eased if he cooperated, but the magic beast remained silent, blood dripping from his mouth. With a sigh, Jinwoo suspected that the system was interfering once again, preventing the boss from speaking. "You've got nothing to say, huh?" Jinwoo thought to himself. "It must be the system blocking you, but I'll uncover the truth sooner or later." Jinwoo opened his inventory and, with a focused expression, pulled out a key. This was no ordinary key. It had come from the cursed random box he had received after defeating the demon monarch, King Borin, in the demon castle. Back then, the key had been a mystery, offering no information about its purpose, leaving Jinwoo confused. But now, after reflecting on his recent achievements, he recalled how things had changed. During the Jeju Island raid, he had reached level 100, a milestone that unlocked new details about the key. The system had finally revealed its purpose. The conditions had been met. The key unlocks the entrance to the Katanon Temple. It can be used at the designated gate. The location of the designated gate will be revealed after the allotted time passes. The name, Katanon Temple, rang in Jinwoo's mind, striking a deep sense of familiarity. As he connected the dots, memories flooded back. The double dungeon, the old temple at its end, the stone statues. The stone slate held by one of them. It all came rushing back with crystal clarity. The puzzle pieces were falling into place. Jinwoo realized that the system was guiding him back to where everything had started. The dungeon where he had first encountered the terrifying stone statues, the same place that had marked the beginning of his transformation as a hunter. And now, it was calling him once more. But this time, it felt different. If everything had been orchestrated from the very beginning, if the system had been waiting for him to return, Jinwoo knew he couldn't ignore it. Meanwhile, in a different part of the city, Jinho sat in front of his computer, eyes narrowed with fierce concentration. His gaze was sharp as he scanned through various posts and comments online, his determination evident. Like a hawk hunting its prey, Jinho meticulously combed through the internet, looking for anything that could tarnish Jinwoo's reputation. His mission was clear: protect Jinwoo, no matter the cost. Just as he leaned back, taking a brief moment to relax, Jinwoo appeared silently behind him, causing Jinho to jump in surprise, startled out of his focused state. Without warning, Jinwoo asked if everything was all right, startling Jinho and causing him to leap from his chair in surprise. He quickly spun around, recognizing his boss standing there, dressed in his hunting gear. Jinwoo's sudden appearance prompted concern as he inquired if there had been any trouble, but Jinho reassured him there wasn't. Curiosity getting the best of him, Jinho then asked why Jinwoo was geared up. Jinwoo casually explained that he had just returned from clearing a gate, mentioning they needed funds for the guild and that he had brought back high-level magical cores. Jinho was awestruck, realizing that Jinwoo had just cleared a high-ranked gate and secured their guild's financial stability in the process. This meant that they wouldn't have to worry about paying salaries for their future employees. Jinwoo seemed confused when Jinho mentioned employees. Jinho then reminded him they needed at least one more member to officially establish the guild. As if to further emphasize their situation, Jinho brought up another important matter: the guild's name. Jinwoo seemed to think it was a trivial issue, but Jinho was adamant, explaining how crucial it was for their identity. He enthusiastically suggested several names: Sungyu Guild, combining their last names, or Wuho Guild, based on the final syllables of their names. He even floated the idea of Jinjin Guild, pulling from their middle syllables. But Jinwoo, without much thought, proposed Solo Play Guild, reflecting his independent playstyle. Jinho was taken aback, wondering if Jinwoo was being serious, or if this was some attempt at humor. Despite his immense respect for his boss, Jinho couldn't help but think humor wasn't one of Jinwoo's strengths. The name felt odd, reminding him that even someone as extraordinary as Jinwoo had quirks that made him human. Their discussion was cut short by a knock at the door. Jinho paused, unsure of who could be visiting at such a time. He opened the door cautiously, only to hear a voice asking if this was Hunter Sung Jinwoo's guild office. When Jinho confirmed, he was stunned to see none other than Hunter Cha Hai-in standing before him. Jinwoo, equally surprised, stood frozen as she walked in. Unable to grasp why someone of her caliber was here, Jinwoo quickly asked what had brought her to his office. Hai-in's reply was simple but shocking. She wanted to join his guild. Jinwoo was confused and pressed her for more details, wondering if the president of the Hunters Association had sent her, or if she had been dismissed from her previous guild. But Hai-in denied both suggestions. When Jinwoo inquired why she wanted to join his small guild, especially one he had jokingly named Solo Play, Hai-in seemed flustered, clearly unprepared for such a name. Jinwoo saw nothing wrong with it, explaining that both he and Jinho had agreed. Jinho, caught off guard, quickly corrected him, insisting no such agreement had been made. Jinwoo, however, remained convinced they had reached a consensus, brushing it off with characteristic nonchalance. The conversation grew more perplexing as Jinwoo tried to clear his mind. He carefully observed Hai-in, her pulse, her breathing, her expression, sensing that she was hiding something. Why was she so intent on joining his guild? Jinwoo then brought up the fact that it had been 2 years since Hai-in had awakened as a hunter and assumed she was still bound by a contract with her current guild. To his surprise, Hai-in revealed that she was willing to pay the penalty herself to break the contract, expecting no compensation from Jinwoo's guild in return. Perplexed, Jinwoo pushed further, asking why she would go to such lengths to join a guild that had little to offer her. Hai-in hesitated, bowing her head in silence. She couldn't bring herself to reveal the real reason, that ever since they had first met, she had been drawn to him, captivated by the unique scent only she could sense. She recalled the overwhelming emotions that had flooded her during the battle on Jeju Island when she had been certain of her impending death. Yet, when she awoke in the helicopter, alive against all odds, the first name that came to her mind was Jinwoo. Even the president of the Hunters Association had confirmed that it was Jinwoo's presence that had brought her comfort in those terrifying moments. Embarrassed, Hae-in found it difficult to admit the personal reasons behind her decision, that she wanted to be by Jinwoo's side in moments of life and death. It was too personal, too raw to confess. Meanwhile, Jinwoo recalled her unusual behavior at the funeral and realized she had likely been contemplating this decision for some time. Finally, Hae-in lifted her head, her expression composed, as she met Jinwoo's gaze and gave a simple, rehearsed response. Hae-in offered a simple explanation. She wanted a quieter, simpler life. Yet Jinwoo could sense that there was more to it than she was letting on. As he weighed her words, Jinho chimed in, reminding him of the immense pressure hunter Cha Hai-in must have faced from the Hunters Guild to stay with them. She was still young, only 22 or 23, and being an S-rank hunter came with its own burdens. The guild had suffered heavy losses during the Jeju Island raid, and losing their strongest remaining member would be another devastating blow. Jinwoo understood the weight of such expectations all too well, but he also knew he had to be cautious in making his decision. To test her resolve, Jinwoo decided to implement an entrance test for his guild. Hai-in blinked in surprise. There had been no mention of a test in the recruitment notice. Jinwoo, however, smoothly deflected, claiming it was an established rule and perhaps an oversight on Jinho's part. Before they proceeded, he sent Jinho to fetch drinks and snacks, giving them a moment to prepare. The moment Hae-in heard the word test, her entire demeanor shifted. Her casual stance was replaced by a steely determination, her expression sharp with focus. Jinwoo found himself caught off guard for a moment. Was she being serious, or was this just stubbornness? But the fire in her gaze told him she had already made up her mind. Jinwoo explained that her opponent would be one of his summons, his strongest one, in fact. Still, Hai-in showed no hesitation, no fear. She was ready. Without delay, Jinwoo suggested they conduct the test at the Hunters Association gymnasium. As if moving in perfect sync, they both rose from their seats, their decision made. Then, Jinwoo had an idea. The gymnasium was quite far from their current location, but he wanted to test whether his shadow exchange skill could transport both of them together. With a calm reassurance, he told Hae-in that there was no need for them to leave the usual way. They could take a shortcut, if she stayed close to him for a moment. Hae-in felt her breath catch as Jinwoo stepped toward her, closing the distance more than she had anticipated. Before she could react, Jinwoo activated his skill. In an instant, the world shifted beneath them, and they sank into their shadows without a sound. Meanwhile, back in the office, Jinho returned with tea and snacks, only to find an unfamiliar presence in the room. A high orc shadow soldier, sitting in Jinwoo's place. The orc, realizing the opportunity before him, wasted no time. Without hesitation, he grabbed the snacks and began devouring them, completely unbothered by Jinho's bewildered stare. As Jinwoo and Hai-in traveled through the shadows, Jinwoo confirmed his hypothesis. Shadow exchange didn't just allow him to move alone. It created a gate through which he could transport others as well. Their entry point was the shadow on the ground, and their destination was determined by the location of one of his soldiers. It was a remarkable ability, allowing him to cover vast distances instantly, though it carried a 3-hour cooldown. They emerged in the gymnasium, the motion-sensitive lights flickering on as they registered the presence of their mana. The vast, brightly lit space stretched before them, and Hae-in couldn't hide her amazement at what she had just experienced. She took a moment to take in her surroundings before turning her attention back to Jinwoo, who was already preparing to begin the test. Just as they were about to start, Hai-in suddenly realized she had left her weapon behind. When Jinwoo teased her about the time she had used a pickaxe during one of their missions, she blushed, clearly embarrassed by the memory. Jinwoo chuckled lightly, reassuring her that he was only joking. Hae-in considered borrowing a weapon from the storage and made her way to the door, using her hunter's license to access the keycard reader. Jinwoo mentioned that while hunters could use the gym's reserve weapons, they were mainly for practice and not of the highest quality. After inspecting the selection, Heian chose a sword similar in length to the one she usually wielded. Feeling confident in her choice, she nodded, ready for the challenge ahead. Jinwoo, however, voiced concern about her comfort with an unfamiliar weapon, but Heian brushed it off. In real battles, monsters never fought on their opponent's terms. Jinwoo agreed, knowing that adaptability was key to survival. Satisfied with her resolve, Jinwoo summoned one of his shadows. A few paces away, a knight materialized silently from the ground, none other than Igris, his most skilled swordsman. Jinwoo laid out the conditions for victory. Heian would win if she destroyed Igris, while defeat would come if she chose to surrender. Jinwoo, recalling that bringing out his strongest shadow, Baru, might overwhelm her, decided Igris would provide a fair yet formidable test. Heian readied herself with the borrowed sword, but Jinwoo hesitated, recalling her earlier statement about weapons not mattering. He asked her to turn around for a moment. When she did, Jinwoo retrieved the Demon Monarch's sword from his inventory and handed it to Igris, elevating the challenge. With everything in place, Jinwoo signaled the start. As Heian turned back, she noticed Igris now holding a sword crackling with blue electricity, a weapon far more powerful than what he initially wielded. Without a moment's delay, Igris struck first, sending a bolt of lightning toward Heian with deadly accuracy. She instinctively leapt back, narrowly avoiding the attack with the agility of a cat. The lightning slammed into the wall behind her, leaving a charred mark that revealed its destructive power. Jinwoo observed, impressed by Heian's reflexes. He knew that anyone else might have been severely injured, if not killed, by such a close call. Heian tightened her grip on her sword, her gaze focused and unwavering. She charged forward, meeting Igris head-on, their blades colliding in a brilliant clash that sent sparks flying through the air. Meanwhile, on the top floor of the main association building, President Go Gun-hee was reviewing confidential reports. His office, located on the highest floor, offered a clear view of all the association buildings and the surrounding area. Something outside his window caught his attention. The lights in the supposedly vacant gymnasium were on. Confused, he buzzed his secretary to check if anyone had reserved the gym that day. When the secretary informed him that there had been no bookings, Gun-hee requested the surveillance cameras be turned on and displayed on his monitor. Curiosity piqued, he watched as the feed came to life, showing a battle unfolding in the gymnasium. His eyes widened as he recognized Jinwoo and Heian mid-combat, the sight of lightning strikes and clashing blades filling the screen. As the screen flickered to life, President Go Gun-hee was surprised to see Jinwoo and Heian sparring in the gym. His initial shock quickly softened into a smile as a thought crossed his mind. Were the two hunters involved in something more personal? He recalled a recent moment when Heian had warmly greeted Jinwoo after a mission. The realization made him grin fondly. Deciding to give them some privacy, Gun-hee instructed his secretary to turn off the gym surveillance, recording it as a routine maintenance check in the logs. After the screen went dark, Gun-hee chuckled softly to himself, feeling nostalgic. He returned to his reports, but the faint tremor from the gym, strong enough to make the walls in his office ripple, reminded him of the sheer power those two wielded. Even then, he didn't look up, the smile on his face lingering. The thought of youth, vitality, and the energy that came with it warmed his heart as he contentedly resumed his work. Meanwhile, Jinwoo watched the match closely, realizing that Heian was proving to be far stronger than he had anticipated. Even with Igris wielding the formidable Demon Monarch's sword, Heian's strength and skill were overwhelming. Igris, after being thrown into the wall with a heavy crash, was clearly outmatched. Jinwoo, seeing no need to push the fight further, called off the match, but to his surprise, Heian wasn't satisfied. "Is Igris really your strongest summon?" she asked, her voice filled with determination. Jinwoo hesitated. He was worried about her safety, but Heian, with resolve burning in her eyes, insisted. She wanted to face the strongest shadow Jinwoo had, even if it came with risk. After a moment of reflection, Jinwoo finally agreed, impressed by her spirit. He summoned Baru, the ant-like shadow soldier with a menacing aura. Unlike the others, Baru had been created for a singular purpose: to kill hunters. His presence was overwhelming, and despite being a shadow, he retained the deadly abilities of his former self. Baru appeared with a quiet yet palpable intensity, and before engaging, he turned to Jinwoo for confirmation. Jinwoo gave him his orders: to fight and defeat Hyen, but under no circumstances was she to be harmed. Baru nodded, his loyalty unwavering, and unleashed a fearsome battle cry. The sheer force of it shattered the lights above them, plunging the gym into darkness. The raw power of his roar rippled through the air, sending chills down Hyen's spine. Baru's bladed claws extended from his fingers, sharp and deadly, ready to strike. Hyen braced herself, feeling a wave of unease wash over her as she sensed Baru's sheer power. But before the tension could peak any further, Jinwoo reminded Baru sternly of his command: no harm to Hyen. Baru's fierce resolve softened instantly, his obedience to Jinwoo stronger than his bloodlust. He retracted his claws, though his intent to win the battle remained undiminished. Sensing an opportunity, Hyen moved swiftly, ready to strike. But before she could even react, Baru vanished from her sight. In an instant, he reappeared behind her, his speed and power making him an impossible foe to track. Recognizing the move from a previous encounter, Hyen steeled herself, determined not to fall for the same trick twice. Though Baru's speed momentarily stunned her, her reflexes took over, and she unleashed a flurry of attacks. Her sword danced in the air, striking out dozens of times, but Baru avoided each blow with minimal effort, not even needing to step aside. His movements were a blur, precise, efficient, leaving afterimages as he effortlessly dodged. The gap in their power became glaringly obvious. Baru, confident in his abilities and Jinwoo's command to defeat Hyen without harming her, planned to demonstrate the vast difference in their strength. His aim was simple: to make her lose the will to continue by showing her just how outmatched she was. Hyen, however, was in disbelief. Despite her relentless strikes, Baru dodged everything, remaining calm and unmoved. Even at such close range, her efforts were futile. When she aimed for his neck, he merely tilted his head back slightly, evading the attack with ease. It was as if he was predicting her every move. Frustration began to gnaw at Hyen. How could a mere summon, a shadow of a creature long dead, possess such power? And if Baru was this strong, what kind of monstrous strength did Jinwoo hold to command him so easily? Her thoughts raced, but she had little time to ponder. Suddenly, Baru closed the distance between them, and a wave of dread washed over her. The stench of death, thick and oppressive, emanated from him, filling her senses. She felt her body freeze for a moment, believing it was over. But instead of attacking, Baru unleashed a deafening roar, one filled with sheer, unbridled magic power. The force of it blasted Hyen backward, leaving her momentarily stunned. Jinwoo, watching from the sidelines, grimaced. He took no pleasure in the one-sided spectacle and asked Hyen if she was ready to yield, hoping she would recognize the difference in strength. But the fire in Hyen's eyes hadn't dimmed. She refused to give up, insisting she could still fight, even against the overwhelming odds. Jinwoo watched intently, trying to understand Hyen's determination. He hadn't expected her to persist, especially after seeing just how outclassed she was. Baru, unlike Jinwoo's other shadow soldiers, still retained the instincts of a killing machine. Though intelligent, the primal hunger for battle and bloodshed simmered beneath the surface. Even now, Jinwoo could sense Baru suppressing his violent urges. He worried that if Hyen made a misstep, especially one aimed at a weak spot, Baru's restraint might slip. Just then, something shifted in Baru's stance. His instincts flared. His predator's nature could no longer tolerate a prey that continued to defy him. His claws extended with a deadly sharpness, and in a flash he lunged at Hyen. But she was ready. With skill and speed, she dodged the attack. The tension between them was palpable as their eyes locked, each refusing to back down, the room charged with the intensity of the impending clash. Hae-in decided to unleash her most reliable move, a skill known as sword dance. Her movements became increasingly fluid and graceful, her sword cutting through the air with mesmerizing speed. It was as if she was performing an intricate dance, the sound of her blade clashing against Baru's claws echoing through the gymnasium. Despite Baru's calm expression, his growing displeasure was clear. He was tiring of the game. Deciding to end it, Baru caught her blade mid-swing with his bare hand and, with a flick of his wrist, shattered it. The sword broke in half, leaving Hae-in with only a short, jagged piece. Yet, Hae-in's resolve never faltered. Her eyes burned with cold determination, and she funneled all her magic power into the remaining fragment of her weapon. It began to glow with an intense light, and Hae-in prepared to unveil a skill she had never used before. 4 swords of light. The blade shimmered brilliantly, and seeing an opening, she seized her moment. Baru, having momentarily dropped his guard after breaking her sword, was unprepared for the sudden shift. Hae-in leaped forward, thrusting her glowing weapon toward him with a fierce determination. Jinwoo, watching the battle with growing astonishment, quickly realized the impending danger. In that brief instant, something shifted in Baru. The command Jinwoo had given him to defeat Hae-in without harming her vanished, replaced by a far more primal directive from his former queen: annihilate all enemies. Baru's mindset changed completely. He now saw Hae-in as an enemy to be obliterated. With deadly intent, he extended his claws and launched himself toward her with terrifying speed. Hae-in, frozen in fear, closed her eyes, bracing for what seemed to be certain death. But just as Baru's claws were about to strike, Jinwoo intervened. In a flash, he caught Baru's outstretched claws with his bare hands, stopping the attack just in time. Baru, recognizing his master's presence, trembled as his eyes met Jinwoo's. Realizing the gravity of his mistake, Baru immediately leaped back and dropped to the ground, bowing deeply in submission and begging for forgiveness. Jinwoo stood still for a moment, staring at Baru. He understood what had happened. Baru's primal instincts, his old programming as a weapon of destruction, had briefly overridden Jinwoo's command. With a deep sigh, Jinwoo turned to where Hae-in had collapsed, utterly exhausted from the battle. Concerned by Hae-in's relentless determination, Jinwoo couldn't help but question her motives. Why was she pushing herself so hard? This was just a test, a mere entrance exam for a guild that had yet to make a name for itself. A hunter of her caliber didn't need to go to such lengths, especially when her life was at risk. It simply didn't make sense. Jinwoo asked her why she was doing this, hoping for an answer that would explain her actions. But Hae-in remained silent, her expression unreadable. Her refusal to answer only deepened Jinwoo's confusion. He asked again, wondering if there was something more behind her actions. Then a thought crossed his mind. Could it be that she had feelings for him? The idea seemed absurd, but it was the only explanation he could think of for her intense determination. Hae-in's eyes widened slightly, as though Jinwoo's question had jolted her from her thoughts. Seeing her reaction, Jinwoo quickly tried to brush it off, thinking he might have been mistaken. Perhaps there was another reason for her resolve. After a moment of silence, however, Hae-in quietly confirmed his suspicions. She admitted with some hesitation that he was right. She did have feelings for him. Jinwoo was taken aback by the simple admission, realizing that her actions had stemmed from something deeper than he had initially thought. Meanwhile, across the ocean at the Federal Bureau of Hunters in the United States, the atmosphere was tense. In the Hunter Command Center, Director David Brennan wasn't pleased with the recent reports coming across his desk. Director David Brennan's frustration was palpable as he paced in his office. His team had failed to recruit Sung Jinwoo, the one hunter they desperately needed in their fold. The assistant director, Michael, entered the room with Norma Selner, a specialist with unique abilities. Brennan, eager to understand the situation, wasted no time and demanded an explanation. He wasn't looking for excuses. He needed the truth. Michael quickly explained that, according to Norma's observations, Sung Jinwoo wasn't just another hunter. He was something far more dangerous. Her words sent a shock through Brennan. Michael elaborated, "Jinwoo is one of the kings," a term that immediately made Brennan pause. A king? Did this mean Jinwoo was on par with national-level hunters, individuals with unmatched strength and influence? Norma Selner stepped forward to explain. She described how all awakened hunters draw their powers from a dimension known as the other side. The connection between a hunter and this realm was what she could sense. Usually, some hunters glowed brightly, their power shining through like blinding light. Those were the kings. However, when she gazed into Jinwoo's presence, what she encountered was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "When I looked into Sung Jinwoo's eyes," she said, "I didn't see light. I didn't see a connection to the other side. I saw darkness. Absolute, consuming darkness. He doesn't borrow his power from anywhere. He is the source. There's nothing else feeding his strength. He is the darkness." Norma's description left the room in stunned silence. Brennan, trying to comprehend, asked, "Does that mean he's evil?" Norma shook her head. "This isn't about good or evil. It's about the nature of his power. Jinwoo's strength doesn't come from an external force like other hunters. It comes from within, meaning there are no limits, no restrictions. He doesn't follow the rules of other awakened." The room grew tense. Michael, visibly shaken by this revelation, muttered under his breath, "No limits, no weaknesses." The words hung in the air like a chilling realization. Norma nodded, confirming the terrifying truth. Director Brennan, now fully grasping the gravity of what they were up against, thanked Norma for her insight. The air in the room was heavy as they all tried to process the implications of what they had just learned. Brennan stood abruptly from his desk, his mind racing with a plan. His sudden movement caught Michael's attention. "Where are you going?" Michael asked, his curiosity piqued. Brennan didn't hesitate as he instructed, "Follow me to basement level 24. The command was stern, leaving no room for questions. Michael hurried behind him as they made their way to the elevator. As they descended in the elevator, Brennan began to explain. "If we can't recruit Sung Jinwoo using Norma's abilities, then we'll have to find another way. We need to be prepared for the worst-case scenario." Brennan's tone was sharp, with an undercurrent of urgency. Michael's thoughts raced as the elevator doors closed. Brennan's reference to basement level 24 made his stomach drop. It was the most secure and secretive area of their headquarters. As they descended deeper, Brennan continued, his voice steady. "Do you remember the first S-rank gate that ever opened?" he asked. Michael nodded slowly, recalling the horrors of the event that had shaken the world. The dungeon break that had annihilated the entire West Coast. An event that no one could forget. Following the catastrophe, the United States had responded by assembling the strongest hunters from around the world, offering them immense rewards to face the unprecedented threat. Of the many who joined the raid, only 5 survived. These hunters were later known as the national-level hunters, granted authority and status equivalent to that of a nation. The raid, however, was infamous for one key reason. Kamish, the dragon known as the Inextinguishable Flame. Kamish had slaughtered hundreds of top-ranking hunters single-handedly, etching a tragic chapter in the history of awakened hunters. As the elevator doors opened to the basement level, Director Brennan turned to Michael. "Can you believe that there was a silver lining to that disaster?" Brennan asked. Michael was momentarily confused, but then it dawned on him what the director meant. Brennan nodded, confirming Michael's realization as they entered the final room on the floor. Brennan led them to a heavily fortified safe, which he carefully unlocked. Inside, resting within a tempered glass case, was a runestone unlike any other. It was the runestone extracted from the remains of Kamish. As Michael's eyes widened in recognition, Brennan began to explain. "It's been 8 years since the Kamish raid. Brennan said, his tone measured. "And in all that time, we've never seen a mage-class national-level hunter. This runestone has been sitting here, waiting in this cold, dark basement, with no one strong enough to claim it." He gazed at the runestone thoughtfully before continuing. "But I believe Kamish might still hold one last gift for our country. A gift that could change everything." Brennan's eyes fell on the powerful artifact. His mind raced with possibilities. This runestone, born from Kamish's remains, could hold the key to resolving their current dilemma, perhaps even to controlling a force as overwhelming as Sung Jinwoo. The director's hope was now anchored in the untapped potential of Kamish's last remnant, a relic that might be the nation's best shot at surviving whatever was to come next. Meanwhile, Jinwoo stood before the bathroom mirror after his shower, examining his reflection. He noticed subtle changes in his appearance. He had grown a few inches taller and had become more muscular. He wondered if his reawakening was responsible for these changes, as he had always considered himself rather average in appearance. The thought crossed his mind that the buffs from his will to survive might have affected his physical appearance, possibly even healing his skin. Curious about how others perceived him, Jinwoo peeked into the living room where his sister, Gina, was lying on the couch. He grinned, deciding to ask for her opinion on his appearance. However, Gina wasn't impressed and teasingly called him a bum. Jinwoo retaliated by pinching her cheek, prompting her to kick him in the shin. But she ended up hurting herself in the process. Amused by their playful exchange, Jinwoo reminded her of his strength, jokingly asking how she had managed to get into school with such a bird brain. Gina proudly declared that she was at the top of her class, but Jinwoo pointed out that it was only for her mock exams. The conversation shifted when Jinwoo mentioned his plans to form a new guild. Gina, intrigued, asked what name he had in mind. Jinwoo suggested the Solo Play Guild, but Gina quickly pointed out that it didn't make sense since he summoned shadow soldiers and wasn't really a solo player. After thinking for a moment, Gina suggested the name Jin Guild. She explained that the characters Ah meant I, and Jin meant to go forward, creating a clever play on words. She revealed that it was also her name spelled backward, which Jinwoo found amusing. He agreed that Jin was a fitting name for his new guild. That night, Haein lay under her blanket, embarrassed by the events of the day. The memory of her confession to Jinwoo kept replaying in her mind, making her cringe with discomfort. She couldn't believe she had admitted her feelings for him so easily. Burrowing deeper into her blanket, she wondered how Jinwoo had reacted to her words. Earlier, Jinwoo had asked if there was another way for her to handle the situation instead of joining the guild, and at the time, Haein had used the excuse of needing time to think to avoid further conversation. Now, as she lay in bed, her face flushed with embarrassment, she couldn't stop reflecting on the moment. She told herself that it was only natural to be interested in Jinwoo, given how he had saved her life. But deep down, she knew her feelings were far more complicated. Her thoughts shifted to Min Byung-gyu, the healer who had actually saved her life. A faint memory suddenly surfaced, a voice she had almost forgotten. It pulled her out of her thoughts, as if a dream was slipping away just before she could fully remember it. The voice spoke urgently, warning her to be careful around Jinwoo, urging her to warn him about the power he possessed. The realization struck Haein like a cold wave. She finally recalled the encounter with Hunter Min Byung-gyu. At the Knights Guild, the tension was palpable as Yuntae relayed important news to Jong-soo. A new gate had opened the previous day, and Yuntae informed him that obtaining a raid permit would be difficult due to the gate's high rank. While it wasn't an S-rank gate, it was dangerously close, and the guild's concerns were growing. Jong-soo acknowledged the looming threat of the situation. The guild was walking a fine line, and they couldn't afford to underestimate the risks of the raid. Yuntae explained that if the gate had been classified as S-rank, the best course of action would have been to abandon it entirely. The Knights Guild simply didn't have the manpower to assemble a capable assault team for such a high-level gate. However, as one of the country's 5 major guilds, their reputation was on the line, and failure was not an option. Jong-soo's frustration was evident. He knew that many people misunderstood the true danger of A-rank gates, thinking they were all relatively the same. Yuntae then mentioned that if they passed on this gate, the Fame Guild would likely seize the opportunity, and that idea made Yong-soo's eye twitch in irritation. The thought of letting such a valuable gate slip through their fingers, so close to their own territory, was maddening. As they discussed their options, Jung Yerim, an A-rank healer, joined the conversation. She suggested forging an alliance with another guild. Jong-soo, however, was skeptical. He doubted any guild would be willing to cooperate, especially since it would be obvious that the Knights Guild was seeking help, because they didn't believe they could clear the gate on their own. Undeterred, Yerim proposed a different idea, recruiting a single individual hunter, rather than relying on a guild alliance. Jong-soo was initially dismissive, questioning how one hunter could make a significant difference in such a high-stakes raid. But then, Yerim dropped the name Sung Jinwoo. At the mention of his name, Jong-soo's expression shifted. Sung Jinwoo wasn't just any hunter, he was a force to be reckoned with. Joining forces with him might not only improve their chances of clearing the gate safely, but it could also elevate the Knights Guild's image. Yuntae added that Jinwoo had recently cleared an A-rank gate on a highway, but had kept a low profile since. After a moment of consideration, Jong-soo decided that they couldn't afford to wait any longer. Instead of handling things over the phone, he resolved to visit Sung Jinwoo in person to discuss the matter and make the proposal directly. The next day, Jinwoo arrived at the office, having made his decision about the guild's name. He proposed Arjin Guild, and Jinho couldn't help but smile. It was a name that made sense, and more importantly, it wasn't something as silly as Solo Play Guild. With that settled, all that remained was recruiting one final founding member to complete the team. Curious, Jinho then asked about Cha Haein, wondering why Jinwoo hadn't chosen her. After all, she was an S-rank hunter, young, with a stellar record, and, by all accounts, very attractive. Seemingly the perfect fit for the guild. But Jinwoo had a different vision. He explained that while Haein was undoubtedly impressive, she wasn't the right match for their guild. Jinwoo was looking for someone with a hunter's license, someone who had no interest in joining a guild, but who was still reliable and trustworthy. Just as they were discussing potential candidates, there was a knock at the door. Jinwoo wondered if it might be Cha Haein, perhaps reconsidering her offer. But when he opened the door, he was met with three unfamiliar faces. Park Jong-soo, the guild master of the Knights Guild, stood with Yuntae and Jung Yerim as they greeted Jinwoo. Jong-soo quickly introduced himself before showing Jinwoo a video of a massive gate that had recently appeared in Busan. The gate, enormous in size, emanated an overwhelming amount of mana, indicating its power. Though it hadn't been officially classified as an S-rank gate by the Hunters Association, it was the largest gate ever to appear in Busan, and the situation was dire. As Jinwoo watched the video, his mind briefly wandered to Busan, where he considered visiting Juhi for some sashimi during his trip. As the conversation progressed, Jung Yerim, an A-rank healer, shyly asked if Jinwoo might give her an autograph. But before the topic could shift any further, Jong-soo steered the conversation back to the matter at hand. He informed Jinwoo that the Hunters Association had refused to issue a raid permit for the gate due to the absence of any S-rank hunters in the Knights Guild. The association had deemed the raid too risky without the required strength. However, there was a possibility they could secure the permit if Jinwoo agreed to join their assault team. To make the offer more appealing, Jong-soo offered Jinwoo 20% of the profits, a generous share compared to the typical 10% S-rank hunters received. Jinwoo, however, had a different proposition. He suggested a 50-50 split, much to Jong-soo's surprise. Jinwoo explained that he would only agree to join them if they treated him as part of a guild, not as an individual hunter. He also mentioned that he was in the process of forming his own guild, Arjin. A bead of sweat formed on Jong-soo's forehead as he tried to negotiate, countering with a 40-60 split in favor of Jinwoo. However, Jinwoo was unmoved, clearly not interested in haggling further. Realizing he had little room to maneuver, Jong-soo, acknowledging Jinwoo's formidable resolve despite his young age, finally agreed to the 50-50 split. But he added one condition: Jinwoo would need to defeat the dungeon boss. Jinwoo readily agreed without hesitation. Jong-soo then mentioned the urgency of the situation. Since the gate had been discovered some time ago, they would need to raid it the very next day. He offered to give Jinwoo a ride to Busan, but Jinwoo politely declined, explaining that he had prior plans for the day and would join them the next morning. He assured them he wouldn't be late. As the meeting wrapped up, Yoon-tae, who had been quietly observing, suddenly noticed something odd, a movement in Jinwoo's shadow. He paused for a moment, wondering if his eyes were playing tricks on him. Jong-soo, however, dismissed the thought, jokingly wondering if Yoon-tae had been drinking. Just as they were about to leave, Jinwoo's phone began vibrating on the table. Glancing at the screen, Jinwoo saw a number he didn't recognize. He excused himself and stepped outside to take the call. To his surprise, it was his mother, Kyung-hee, on the line. She had just purchased a new cell phone and wanted to hear his voice. Jinwoo, delighted to hear from her, suggested they have dinner together that evening, as it had been a while since they spent time together. Kyung-hee agreed, and Jinwoo looked forward to a pleasant evening with his mother. The next day, the elite hunters of the Knights Guild gathered at Gwangali Beach in Busan, their anticipation for the upcoming raid palpable in the air. However, Guild Master Jong-soo couldn't shake his nervousness. He regretted not insisting that Jinwoo travel with them the day before, and now he anxiously awaited his arrival, hoping everything would go smoothly. With only 5 minutes left before the raid was set to begin, Jinwoo stepped out of his apartment building, dressed casually in comfortable clothes and sneakers. He glanced up at the sky, noticing the grey clouds gathering and briefly wondering if his sister Gina had remembered to bring an umbrella. But that thought quickly faded as he focused on the mission ahead. He activated Shadow Exchange, instantly swapping places with one of his shadow soldiers, teleporting directly to the meeting point at Gwangali Beach. The scene at the beach was tense, with a large crowd gathered to witness the enormous gate that loomed before them. The sky overhead was clouded and foreboding, adding to the sense of unease. Up close, the gate was even more imposing, its size awe-inspiring. Jinwoo scanned the area and took note of the teams preparing for the raid. The hauling team was positioned on one side and the mining team was stationed at the opposite end. The assault team, a mix of 13 A-rank hunters and 20 B-rank hunters, stood ready. Jinwoo couldn't help but be impressed by the number of A-rank hunters, a clear sign of the Knights Guild's strength, as they boasted one of the largest contingents of high-ranked hunters in the country. As Jinwoo surveyed the scene, he was quickly surrounded by the other hunters, all eager to speak with him and ask questions. They marveled at his abilities, especially his performance during the Jeju Island raid, and were in awe of the sheer number of shadow soldiers he could summon. Feeling the weight of their curiosity, Jinwoo was relieved when Yerim, the healer from the Knights Guild, stepped forward to intervene. She introduced herself to Jinwoo and expressed her hope that they would work well together during the raid. Her presence offered a moment of respite for Jinwoo amidst the barrage of questions. Guildmaster Jong-soo Park, visibly excited, greeted Jinwoo warmly. However, Jinwoo was surprised to learn that Jong-soo had not yet informed the others about the raid's leadership. Jong-soo quickly addressed the group, announcing that he would be leading the raid as the Guildmaster. This announcement didn't sit well with some of the hunters, who had hoped that Jinwoo would take charge instead. Despite the murmurs of disappointment, Jong-soo calmly explained that Jinwoo would be assigned to protect the backline and ensure the safety of everyone involved. A few hunters voiced their confidence, questioning if they even needed protection. But Jong-soo remained unfazed, urging them to focus and get ready to move out. With the preparations complete, he signaled the start of the raid, and the team began advancing toward the gate, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them inside. Meanwhile, at Gina's high school, 3 male students grumbled as they were tasked with an errand by their art teacher. They were annoyed at having to do something they felt wasn't their responsibility. Despite their complaints, they made their way to the second art classroom, which had been converted into a storage space. As they unlocked the door, a thick cloud of dust greeted them, indicating the room hadn't been used in ages. Inside, it was cluttered with old art supplies, discarded drawings, and sketching statues. While debating how many statues they needed to carry back, one of the students noticed something unusual in the corner of the room. Curious, the others joined him to investigate. In the far corner of the room, a large blue hole in the wall, about the size of a person, caught their attention. The largest of the three students, trying to appear unfazed, examined the gate. He reassured the others that it was harmless, assuming that only hunters could pass through and nothing dangerous could emerge. Confident that nothing would happen, he placed his hand on the surface of the gate. But in that instant, a crack ran across the gate and a hand shot out, gripping the student's head. He struggled, but the hand's grasp was unbreakable. In a horrifying moment, a loud crack echoed through the room as the student's head was crushed, sending blood splattering across the room. The two remaining students screamed in terror, their clothes stained with their friend's blood. The gate shattered like glass, and suddenly, monstrous creatures began to pour out. Orcs, formidable predators known for their tracking and hunting instincts, emerged into the human world. Though their intelligence was lower than that of humans, their hunting prowess was unmatched. Having been contained in their dungeon for so long, they were eager to finally indulge their bloodlust. Two of these orcs, their senses heightened by the scent of flesh and blood, were the first to charge out, ready to wreak havoc. The barrier between their world and the human realm had disappeared, and with it, a wave of destruction had begun. They had been positioned in the shadows, waiting patiently for the right moment to strike. Their sharp senses quickly detected the presence of potential prey nearby. The first orc, sensing the structure they had infiltrated was teeming with vulnerable humans, grew eager. The building stretched above them, each floor filled with possible victims. Driven by the instinctual thrill of the hunt, the leader orc made a decision. It was time to begin. He issued a command to his companion to summon their brethren, planning a full-scale assault once they had wiped out the humans in the building and secured their position. As the leader orc stalked through the darkened corridor, he spotted two students in the distance, casually chatting without any awareness of the danger closing in. With a growl, he charged forward, his axe raised high. The students, completely caught off guard, froze in terror as the orc advanced rapidly toward them. It was too late for them to react, as the predator closed in with lethal intent. As the shadow ants swarmed along the walls, their eerie battle cry echoed through the air, casting a heavy sense of dread over the hunters of the Night Guild. Fear crept into their hearts, some murmuring doubts and whispering about retreat. They worried that these terrifying creatures might see them as enemies too. Yuntai, visibly tense, turned to Jongsu for direction. Jongsu, though anxious, understood that turning back wasn't an option. Outside, a crowd of reporters waited, ready to pounce on any sign of weakness. They couldn't afford to abandon the raid out of fear. With renewed resolve, Jongsu tried to rally the team. But just as he was finding his voice, Baru, the towering monstrous ant, stepped forward. Jongsu's confidence crumbled in an instant. He stammered, trying to be polite, but Baru didn't respond. The creature simply stared, unblinking. Jongsu, flustered, tried again, more deferential this time, but before he could finish, Baru vanished with a sound like a muted gunshot. Jongsu blinked, confused, scanning the area. Moments later, Baru reappeared, flinging something toward the group. Without a word, he issued a command, and the shadow ants shifted into precise formation, ready to advance. As the team stared in stunned silence, Yuntai leaned in, concerned. "Are you okay? Is it really safe to let them lead?" Jongsu, still reeling from Baru's sudden movements, managed a shaky nod. I think we're fine." Then someone pointed at what Baru had thrown. It was the head of a death knight, one of the raid's most dangerous monsters. Jongsu could hardly believe it. In one swift move, Baru had decapitated a foe that could have wiped out their team. The sight of the Death Knight's severed head filled Jong-soo with awe, and something sharper: ambition. A sly smile tugged at his lips as the realization set in. Baru had obliterated one of the strongest monsters in the dungeon in mere seconds. The Shadow Ants weren't just powerful, they were monstrous in the best possible way. Jong-soo couldn't help but think about the value of the magic stones that such high-ranking monsters would drop. His fingers itched with anticipation as he examined the head, already calculating their potential profit. While he was still marveling at the trophy, the rest of the Night Guild had begun to move, following Baru and the disciplined ranks of Shadow Ants. "Jong-soo!" Yuntai called out, waving. "Come on!" Snapping out of his thoughts, Jong-soo hurried to rejoin them. With Baru in the lead, the group advanced through the dungeon, tearing through the undead like a scythe through wheat. Corpses littered the path they left behind, a testament to Baru's overwhelming power. Among the carnage, Yarim spotted something valuable: a rare vampire corpse, nearly intact. She darted forward, yanking the body away just as a shadow ant was about to devour it. "Hey, back off, you oversized bug," she scolded, frustration bubbling in her voice. "Do you even know how much this is worth?" But the ant ignored her. With a low hiss, it snatched the vampire back and devoured it whole. "Are you serious?" Yarim groaned, lunging in again to stop it. But too late. The ant lashed out with its claw, slicing her shoulder and knocking her to the ground. Blood welled from the wound as she cried out. The ant loomed over her, ready to strike again, until a blur of movement silenced the air. Baru appeared in a flash, his presence alone sending the shadow ant into a trembling retreat. His piercing gaze froze the creature mid-motion. Without a word, Baru stepped forward and gently touched Yarim's wound. A wave of healing magic flowed through her, sealing the gash in seconds. Yarim stared in disbelief. "Thank you," she muttered, awed. She had seen healing magic before, but this was on another level. How is a summon this much better than me at healing? Meanwhile, the Knights Guild strike squad pressed forward, trailing the shadow ants to the dungeon's final chamber. The air grew cold, heavy with malice. At the entrance to the boss's lair, they stopped dead in their tracks. There, cloaked in swirling black magic, stood the Archlich, towering, skeletal, and malevolent. Around it stood several Death Knights, their eyes glowing with unholy fire. Panic rippled through the group. No one had expected this. "That's an Archlich," someone whispered, their voice barely audible. Jong-soo's breath caught in his throat. He had read the reports. Archliches weren't just powerful. They were cataclysms. The Gold Dragon Guild had been wiped out by one, triggering a dungeon break so massive that only Liudra Gang's intervention had prevented a disaster. And now here they were, an A-rank strike team, face to face with one. Yuntai stepped closer to Jong-soo, voice low. "What do we do?" But before Jong-soo could answer, another presence made itself known. Behind them, the hunters turned and their blood ran cold. Another threat was approaching. A thunderous clatter echoed through the dungeon corridor as a new horde of Death Knights surged toward them. Jong-soo's eyes widened in horror. "They're coming back!" he shouted. The realization hit him like a hammer. Every undead creature the shadow ants hadn't consumed had resurrected. "Block the entrance!" he ordered. Without hesitation, Yarim stepped forward, summoning her skill. "Holy wall!" she cried out, and a radiant barrier sprang to life, sealing the doorway just as the first wave of undead slammed into it. The impact sent shudders through the ground, and cracks of stress began to flicker across the barrier. Jong-soo wiped the sweat from his brow. "This is bad. Without Hunter Sung, we might not make it out of here." Yarim, straining under the pressure of her magic, glanced back at him, her voice tight. "This wall? It won't hold more than 5 minutes." Just as panic began to claw at the edges of the hunters' minds, Baru stepped forward. The Archlich, standing at the heart of the lair, recoiled in alarm. It recognized them. The shadow ants. Its hollow eyes widened and its voice trembled with disbelief. "Why is the monarch's army attacking me?" Fear crept into the Archlich's voice as Beru advanced, silent and unflinching. Desperate, the Lich summoned a dozen Death Knights, surrounding the shadow ants like a wall of steel and bone. But Beru didn't falter. His mandibles clicked open, claws extending, and he spoke with a voice like thunder. "We were chosen by the king. You were not." The Arch-Lich trembled with rage and disbelief. "I will speak to the king myself." It never got the chance. Beru vanished, and then reappeared inches from the Arch-Lich's face. The Lich flinched too late. In a flash, Beru drove his clawed hand into the creature's chest, grabbing the glowing pendant that pulsed with necrotic power, its phylactery, the source of its undeath. With the pendant gripped in his claw and bloodless ichor leaking from its mouth, the Arch-Lich shook its head in mute desperation. It let out a screech of denial, but Beru, unmoved, crushed the pendant in his palm. The sound was like shattering glass, followed by utter silence. The Arch-Lich began to disintegrate, its form unraveling into dust and shadow. Around the lair, the summoned Death Knights followed suit, vanishing one by one as their master perished. In mere seconds, the tide of death that had threatened to overwhelm the hunters was gone. The battlefield fell silent. The Night Guild stood frozen, stunned by what they had just witnessed. The mighty Arch-Lich, vanquished with a single blow. Dozens of elite undead, erased in an instant. Jong-Soo stared at Beru in awe, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think he was that strong." Yuntai, eyes wide, gave a low whistle as he glanced around at the remains, or lack thereof. With soldiers like that, Hunter Sung doesn't even need to step into a dungeon, and no one dared to disagree. Jong-Soo couldn't stop replaying what he had just witnessed. With soldiers like Beru, Hunter Sung Jinwoo could clear dungeons without lifting a finger, just by sending in his summons. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Still, Jong-Soo knew there were limits. He probably can't control all of them at once without draining his mana, he reasoned. But even half? Half of that army would rival the strength of an entire top-tier guild. Beside him, Yuntai leaned in, speaking quickly. "Then what are we waiting for? We should try to bring him into the Night Guild." Jong-Soo shook his head immediately. "Not acquisition. Alliance," he corrected firmly. His eyes lit up as the idea took shape in his mind. An alliance between Hunter Sung's newly founded guild and the Night Guild, one of the country's 5 major powerhouses. The thought alone carried weight. It had a nice ring to it. Yuntai chuckled, half joking. "Think he even needs us after what we just saw?" Jong-Soo didn't laugh. Instead, he spoke with conviction. "Even Hunter Sung isn't above the rules. A raid needs a minimum number of hunters, no exceptions. He might be able to solo an entire dungeon, but without the numbers, he can't even enter legally." Yuntai paused, nodding slowly as understanding dawned. "So we provide the numbers, and he brings the power." "Exactly. It's a win-win." Jong-Soo laughed, clearly pleased with the strategy. Yuntai, still grinning, added, "Feels like we're riding his coattails." "We're not," Jong-Soo replied with a smirk. "We're just smart enough to make the right connections." There was determination in Jong-Soo's expression now, clear and sharp. He had made up his mind. This alliance could change everything for the Night Guild. Meanwhile, back at the school, chaos had taken hold. A huge crowd had gathered, drawn by the scale and mystery of the incident. Parents, reporters, and frightened citizens surged toward the gates, shouting in panic and demanding answers. Some cried out for their children, others pushed forward to get a glimpse of the aftermath. Police and members of the Hunters Association were struggling to contain them, forming a barricade to prevent the crowd from flooding the grounds. Then, cutting through the noise like a blade, a voice rang out, authoritative, calm, unmistakable. "Make way," the voice commanded. Heads turned. Sung Jinwoo had arrived. Jinwoo sat quietly in the back of the slowly moving car, the atmosphere tense with unspoken weight. President Go, seated beside him, broke the silence with a grim update. 213 students made it out safely, he began. 10 more were rescued from inside. But the rest, he didn't need to finish. The weight in his voice said enough. He sighed, remorse heavy in his tone. Perhaps we should have seen it coming. As the car rolled through Seoul's tense streets, President Go handed Jinwoo a tablet, displaying data that painted a troubling picture. A sharp rise in gate appearances across the city over the last 6 months. But it wasn't just Seoul. Similar spikes were occurring all over the world. Alongside the increase in gates, more people were awakening as hunters. It was as if the world was trying to maintain equilibrium, matching danger with power. Jinwoo stared at the numbers. Something's changing. President Go's voice softened. That's why I wanted to talk to you. Other nations, Japan, the US, China, Russia, they all want to meet you. Some have sent official requests, others not so official. He reassured Jinwoo that the Hunters Association had protected his personal information. What happened next was up to him. But then came the real concern. If you leave Korea, President Go said, I'm not sure we'll be able to handle what's coming. As the car pulled up to the hospital where Jinwoo's sister had been taken, President Go turned to him, eyes sincere. We'll do whatever it takes to support you. We've already lost 3 of our 10 S-rank hunters. 2 to monsters. 1 was bought by America. He paused. We can't afford to lose another. Jinwoo nodded, thinking deeply. Then, without preamble, he made a request that caught the president off guard. Allow me to enter high-ranking gates alone. Bypass the minimum party requirement. Go blinked. That law existed to prevent unnecessary deaths. Solo raids were suicide missions. But suddenly, it clicked. That's why you started your own guild. Jinwoo confirmed it with a glance. Am I asking for too much? Go hesitated, then smiled wryly. For you? Not impossible. I'll see what I can do. Meanwhile, cameras clicked furiously across town as a photo shoot wrapped up. The photographer lowered his camera, grinning. That was perfect, Soo-yeon. The A-rank hunter and part-time model laughed brightly. Glad to hear it. Her phone buzzed. It was Jinho. Hey, he said, chipper as always. Want to join my new guild? I promise you won't have to do any actual work. Soo-yeon raised a brow. Another guild pitch? Shouldn't I stay with dads instead? Come on, Jinhee's coming back, and we still need 1 more founding member. She laughed, skeptical. You sure you're not getting scammed by someone shady? You'll be shocked to hear who this shady guy is. Curious, she made her way to Jinho's office. The moment she stepped inside, her gaze locked on the tall, stoic man standing beside her cousin. Her breath caught. That's him. Sung Jinwoo turned as she openly stared. Jinho grinned. Soo-yeon, meet Hunter Sung Jinwoo. Jinwoo, this is my cousin, A-rank and family celebrity. Soo-yeon blinked, still stunned. You're really him? The guy who ghosted after crashing Lee Min-sung's press conference? Jinho chuckled. You're the real star here. But Soo-yeon couldn't hide her excitement. Jinwoo watched quietly. Considering the family dynamic, Jinho, a D-rank. Soo-yeon, an A-rank. He wondered if awakenings were partially hereditary. His father had been a hunter too. He turned to Soo-yeon. Did Jinho tell you everything? She nodded. About needing a founding member? Yeah. Jinwoo looked her in the eye. Joining us will cause a stir. You sure you're okay with that? Soo-yeon smirked. Anything's better than ending up stuck with Jin-sung. Jinwoo tilted his head. Jin-sung? Jinho coughed awkwardly. My older brother. Let's just say he's not well liked. Already famous for being difficult, Soo-yeon added dryly. As Jinwoo pondered that, Soo-yeon took a tentative step closer. Would it be weird, she asked, holding up her phone, if I asked for a selfie? Jinwoo blinked in surprise, but nodded. The moment she posted the photo, It exploded online. Fans, hunters, and even celebrities buzzing with excitement. Somewhere across the city, Cha Hai-in paused mid-scroll, eyes narrowing on the image. So, he's finally showing his face again. When Cha Hai-in saw the viral post, an uneasy feeling stirred within her. A tight ache settled in her chest, an emotion she couldn't name, yet couldn't ignore. Her fingers trembled slightly as she stared at the photo of Soo-hyun smiling beside Jinwoo. Jealousy? Regret? It was hard to say. But deep down, she knew. Her feelings for him were far more complicated than she let on. Across the city, Congressman Nam Jun-wook, a former chief prosecutor with a reputation for his bluntness, was fuming. Recognizing summoned creatures as official members of strike squads, he barked, "This is absurd." He slammed a hand down on the table at the Hunter Association's meeting room, glaring at the others. This regulation change passed the moment Sung Jinwoo founded his guild. It's blatant favoritism. The association exists to serve all hunters, not just worship one man. Go Gun-hee, the calm and composed president of the association, didn't flinch. "You're right," he replied evenly. "It is preferential treatment." A murmur of surprise passed through the room. Gun-hee let it hang in the air for a moment before posing a question that silenced the whispers. "If you had the option," he asked, his voice measured, "to send a squad of ordinary hunters into a high-level gate, or to send hunter Sung Jinwoo alone, which would you choose?" The silence that followed was deafening. Turning his gaze back to Nam, Gun-hee's tone sharpened. "You recently moved into a high-rise near the Hunters Guild, didn't you? Property values there are nearly double those in neighboring districts. Why? Because people feel safe near Sung Jinwoo." Nam said nothing, his jaw tightening. "Guilds from all over the world are trying to recruit him," Gun-hee continued. "Japan, America, even Russia. If we keep tying his hands, do you really believe he'll stay in Korea out of goodwill alone?" He let that sink in, then delivered the final blow. "Don't make the same mistake we made with Hwang Dong-soo. If another S-rank gate opens here, who do you expect to save your lives?" Meanwhile, Jinwoo stood before an A-rank gate, Jinho's first real taste of high-level raiding. The massive arch pulsed with ominous energy, towering so high that Jinho craned his neck just to see the top. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" Jinwoo said, amused. "You should have seen the one at Gwangali Beach." Jinho gave a nervous laugh. "Yeah, I think I would have fainted." On the other side of the police line, a swarm of reporters closed in, their cameras flashing as they called out questions. "Hunter Sung, what can you tell us about Ajin Guild's first raid? Is it true your guildmate Soo-hyun is your—" Jinwoo sighed as the questions kept coming, none of them about the dungeon itself. He caught sight of Chief Woo Jincheol standing nearby and immediately turned toward him. "How did this many reporters even know where we'd be?" Jincheol shrugged. "We can guard your personal data, but we can't hide the gates themselves. People track the magic surges. And that selfie? It didn't help." Jinwoo blinked, then gave a sheepish smile. "Right. Social media." Inside the gate, Jinho began panicking again. "We really should have brought a hauling or mining team. There's no way I can manage all this on my own." Jinwoo reassured him with a confident smirk. "Don't worry about it." He raised his hand. From the shadows around him, dozens of figures began to rise. "My soldiers will take care of everything." The pressure in the air shifted the moment Jinwoo summoned his shadow soldiers. Their presence alone was enough to make Woo Jincheol pause. Each one radiated strength equivalent to at least a B-rank hunter, with a few that could easily rival A-rank elites. Watching them pass the safety inspection with ease, Jincheol couldn't help but note how misguided the public outrage over Jinwoo's special treatment truly was. These weren't ordinary summons. They were a legion of power, precision, and discipline. With the team cleared for entry, Jincheol gave the signal to begin. But just as they were about to step into the gate, he surprised everyone by slipping off his coat. Beneath it, he wore a full set of sleek, enchanted armor, intricately designed for both flexibility and defense. Jinwoo and Jinho exchanged surprised glances. I'll be joining you, Jin Cheol said, adjusting his gauntlets. Chairman Go asked me to oversee the raid for safety evaluation, just for today. Jinwoo studied him carefully. Are you sure you're ready for this? Minutes later, Jinchul found himself questioning that readiness. What he witnessed inside the A-rank gate went beyond anything he'd imagined. An enormous naga, a serpentine monster of elite rank, screamed as Jinwoo's shadow soldiers swarmed it. Dozens of blades tore into its body, merciless and methodical. On the other side of the field, the shadow ants were feasting on the carcasses of fallen beasts, their behavior primal and unsettling. Iron, the towering knight, swung his massive axe with brutal efficiency, cleaving through enemies like they were made of paper. Another beast-like soldier, Tank, lunged forward, his massive claws ripping monsters apart in seconds. The High Orcs, vicious and disciplined, struck down foes with bone-crushing power, slicing deep with curved blades, leaving nothing but ruin in their path. Sweat rolled down Jincheol's face. These weren't just summons. They were a nightmare army. Even the most experienced hunters he knew would hesitate to face foes like this. Yet Jinwoo's shadows moved with coordinated precision. And worse, they didn't stay down. Every fallen soldier rose again, regenerated and ready to continue the slaughter. They were relentless. Then Igris stepped into view. He stood out even among the elites, wielding the Demon Monarch's sword with deadly elegance. Every swing of his blade unleashed bolts of lightning, crackling with fused fire and water magic. The sheer force of his attacks shattered enemies instantly, his movements faster than the eye could follow. Jin Cheol, a former hunter himself, stared in disbelief. Could I even survive one exchange with that? He wondered. Is he stronger than an A rank? As the slaughter continued, Jinwoo's voice rang out. That's enough. The shadow ants stopped mid-bite, still gnawing at monster corpses. Jinwoo frowned, irritation flashing across his face. He marched toward the nearest ant and gave it a firm kick. Don't waste the corpses, he said coldly. They're valuable. He redirected the army's focus, ordering the others to begin mining mana crystals from the dungeon walls. Efficiency was key, and Jinwoo ensured every part of the raid served a purpose. Jincheol stood frozen, still absorbing everything. Now he understood why Chairman Go had insisted he come. Jinwoo wasn't just capable of clearing an A-rank dungeon. He could do it alone, retrieve the bodies, extract the resources, and leave with everything of value, all without a single other hunter lifting a finger. Just then, the dungeon boss appeared, a towering monster clad in sea-worn armor, wielding twin tridents. Its presence was suffocating, the air vibrating with menace as it advanced toward Jinwoo and Jincheol. Unfazed, Jinwoo raised his hand calmly. To those still working, stay, he said. The rest of you, you're dismissed. And just like that, the battlefield fell still. Only those needed for the final fight remained. As most of the shadows vanished into the darkness from which they came, Chief Wu Jincheol remained behind, silently puzzled. Why would Jinwoo send away his entire army when they could easily overwhelm the dungeon boss on their own? The decision didn't seem strategic, at least not at first glance, but Jinwoo had his reasons. He knew that relying too heavily on his shadows might dull his edge. His power as a monarch was immense, but he didn't want it to make him complacent. I need to stay sharp, he reminded himself. There would come a day when he'd face an enemy even his shadows couldn't defeat, and when that day came, he would need to be at his absolute best. With a focused expression, Jinwoo summoned the Demon Monarch's dagger. Then, with a thunderous stomp, he cracked the stone floor beneath him, his signal that the battle was about to begin. The dungeon boss responded immediately. A towering magic beast, it let out a guttural roar and swung both its tridents with a force that could flatten buildings. But its attack met only empty air. Jinwoo had already moved, faster than sight, faster than thought. In a blur, he appeared before the creature. One clean, fluid motion later, the beast's head was cleaved in two. Its body collapsed in a heap, the echo of its fall reverberating through the chamber. A moment of silence followed. Then a familiar chime. A system notification flickered before Jinwoo's eyes. Dungeon boss defeated. And then another. He had leveled up. Landing smoothly, Jinwoo turned, only to be greeted by a cascade of pop-ups. The familiar melody of achievement alerts echoed in his mind. One after another, they poured in. He had reached level 101, and with it, a major breakthrough. Every one of his job-exclusive skills had advanced. Shadow extraction, shadow storage, Monarch's domain, shadow exchange. Each had grown stronger. Jinwoo's eyes widened as he read the details. Shadow exchange, in particular, now had a reduced cooldown, an hour shorter. He felt a surge of hope. If this trend continued, he could soon come and go from his shadow network freely, ensuring his mother and sister were always safe, no matter where he was. While Jinwoo absorbed this information, Jinchol remained rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by what he'd just witnessed. The Naga had been no ordinary monster. Its scales were among the hardest known, often used to forge high-grade defensive gear. Yet Jinwoo had sliced through it effortlessly, as if its armor were paper. The combination of power and technique left the veteran hunter speechless. Then, a voice rang out behind him, firm and commanding. "Arise!" Jinwoo's hand stretched toward the Naga's fallen form. From beneath the corpse, wisps of shadow twisted and clawed their way up, forming dark hands that grasped the lifeless body. In a matter of moments, the creature rose once more, its eyes glowing with a dark flame. The Naga had been reborn, not as a beast, but as Jinwoo's newest shadow soldier. A system alert confirmed, shadow extraction successful. Shadow level 13. Jinwoo studied the new summon. It was smaller now, having shed its original bulk, but the mana radiating from its core was immense. It stood on par with Tusk in rank, yet its starting level suggested it had retained much of its original strength. He smiled slightly, pleased with the result. Another powerful piece added to the board. Jinwoo studied the newly reborn shadow closely. It was smaller than it had been in life, but he suspected that, like Tusk, it might be capable of growing in size through the use of magic. Perhaps this was merely its base form. Regardless, its presence radiated power, and Jinwoo was pleased to add it to his ever-expanding army. A familiar system notification appeared, prompting him to assign a name to the new soldier. After a brief pause, Jinwoo typed in a name that came naturally to him, Jima. With that, the shadow beast stood fully acknowledged, and Jinwoo felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. His army was becoming a force unlike anything the world had seen. Standing a few steps back, Jinho watched in silent amazement. The fact that Jinwoo could subjugate such a powerful creature and bend it to his will left him speechless. To Jinho, Jinwoo had long since surpassed the realm of what a normal hunter could be. Still in awe, Jinho reminded him, "Hyung, maybe we should head out?" Jinwoo nodded, but cast one last glance at the massive Naga carcass still lying in the dungeon. It would be a waste to leave it behind. Just as he pondered what to do, a commotion erupted outside the gate. Reporters who had been camped near the dungeon perimeter were jolted by a deep rumble that shook the earth beneath them. Their jaws dropped as something titanic emerged from the shadows. A towering beast with a horned head and immense tusks. It was Tusk, Jinwoo's mighty summon, now shouldering the enormous Naga corpse like it weighed nothing. For a moment, panic swept through the crowd. But then, realization dawned. This was part of the Arjun Guild's raid. No, it was the raid. The fear gave way to wild excitement. Camera shutters clicked like machine guns as reporters scrambled to capture every second of the surreal scene. Jinho glanced at Jinwoo. "Hyung, I think we might have overdone it." Jinwoo gave a nonchalant shrug, watching the media frenzy with calm detachment. Attention was inevitable, especially now. This first raid had left a mark, and not just inside the dungeon. Off to the side, Chief Wu Jinchul stood silent. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot, and his posture slumped. The sheer brutality and raw power he had witnessed still haunted him. Monsters devouring each other alive, shadow beasts regenerating mid-battle, Jinwoo carving through an A-rank boss like it was nothing. It had left a deeper scar than he wanted to admit. Later, when Jin Cheol arrived at the Hunter Association, his footsteps were slow, weighed down by exhaustion and disbelief. Inside, he found Chairman Go Gun-hee waiting. Without preamble, Jin Cheol began to speak, recounting every detail of the raid, the blood, the shadows, the impossible might of Jinwoo's army. His voice wavered at times, but he pushed through, trying to remain composed. Go Gun-hee listened carefully, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. When Jin Cheol finished, the chairman let out a long, heavy sigh. He had seen countless raids in his time and heard tales of horrors most men couldn't imagine. And Jim Chul, a seasoned hunter himself, had weathered them all without flinching. But this was different. Even a man like Wu Jincheol had been shaken to the core, and that, more than anything, told Go Gun-hee just how much the world had changed. His hands clasped behind his back, he stared out at the city beyond. The sky was clear, but his thoughts were storming. The report was more than just surprising. It was transformative. Sung Jinwoo hadn't merely cleared an A-rank gate. He had obliterated everything inside, harvested the mana crystals, collected the monster corpses, and summoned a new shadow soldier, all without aid. No support squad, no backup plan. Just him and his army of shadows. Calling him a one-man assault squad no longer did justice to the truth. A slow, knowing smile crept across Go Gun-hee's face. Sung Jinwoo wasn't just a powerful hunter. He was a guild. A self-contained, unstoppable force that defied conventional definitions. He was changing the landscape, not just of Korea, but of the entire world. In the heart of Shinjuku, Tokyo, a city that never slept, the chaos of everyday life had vanished. The usual noise of traffic, chatter, and hurried footsteps had been swallowed by an eerie silence. Streets once alive with energy now stood frozen in time. Cars sat abandoned mid-intersection, doors ajar, engines running. Bicycles lay toppled on sidewalks. But it wasn't an accident or disaster that caused the stillness. It was something far stranger. One by one, people stepped out of their vehicles, as if pulled by an invisible force. No honking, no shouting, no panic. Just silence, and eyes, all turning skyward. There, suspended above the skyline, loomed an enormous gate, dark, foreboding, and impossibly vast. It stretched upward like a monument to something not of this world, blotting out the sun and casting a long shadow over the city. What was once Tokyo's vibrant heart had fallen into a trance. Every passerby stood rooted in place, captivated and terrified by the sight. The air felt heavy, thick enough to choke on, as if the atmosphere itself had been hijacked by some unseen presence. And as the unnatural quiet gripped Shinjuku, far from the streets, inside a fortified meeting hall, tension rippled through a gathering of Japan's most elite hunters. Representatives from the nation's top guilds, Blades, Phantoms, Invincible Kings, and Snowy Mountains, had assembled. Their presence alone was a sign that something catastrophic was underway. The air in the room buzzed with anxiety, not just about the gate, but what might emerge from it. It was a rare sight. Japan's most powerful guildmasters gathered in one place, a clear sign that something dire was unfolding. The atmosphere crackled with unease as hushed conversations swept through the room like static. Whispers died down the moment Sugimoto Reiji entered, flanked by Hoshino, Kumamoto, and Tawata. Once the vice president of the Blade Guild, Sugimoto had risen to leadership after the catastrophic Jeju Island raid. The memory of that battle still haunted the room. 7 of their top S-rank hunters had perished, including the legendary Goto Ryuji. The loss was more than personnel. It was a symbol of the Blade Guild's waning dominance. Among the assembled hunters, quiet mutterings surfaced. Matsumoto's reckless ambitions had cost them dearly, and now the once unshakable Blade Guild appeared vulnerable. Some saw it as their moment. With Goto gone, the balance of power was shifting, and a new strongest guild could emerge. Sugimoto's group halted, eyes narrowing as the not-so-subtle whispers reached their ears. Hoshino's scowl was sharp. Just a year ago, none of these hunters would have dared speak so openly in their presence. Times had changed. Tawata leaned in, voice low but steady, noting the rumors swirling, talk of the Phantom Guild merging with Snowy Mountain. If true, the combined force would field 4 S-rank hunters, matching the blade's current strength. Sugimoto, unfazed, brushed off the speculation. Numbers alone didn't determine dominance. A patchwork of guilds wouldn't make them the Blade Guild's equal, not in strength, not in spirit. Meanwhile, at the Prime Minister's residence, the atmosphere was suffocating. Heavy silence weighed down every corner of the room, broken only by the thunderous slam of a fist against the table. The Prime Minister was livid. His frustration boiled over as he demanded answers from the Hunters Association. How could an S-rank gate appear in the center of Tokyo without a plan in place? His voice rose. This wasn't just politics anymore. A dungeon break in the capital could mean devastation on an unimaginable scale. The clock was ticking, and Japan's fate was hanging in the balance. Matsumoto raised his hands in an attempt to steady the room's rising tension. He calmly reminded everyone that even S-rank hunters couldn't easily handle an S-rank gate, not without risk. The real threat, he emphasized, came from national-level hunters. But his words didn't land well. The other guild masters exchanged sharp glances, their patience wearing thin. One of them spoke up, voicing what the others were thinking. This wasn't the time for obvious truths. Everyone in the room already knew the scale of the danger. They had witnessed the chaos at Jeju Island firsthand, how quickly control had slipped through their fingers. What they needed now wasn't a reminder of their limits, but a strategy. The idea of recruiting Thomas Andre, the strongest hunter in America, briefly surfaced, but it was shut down just as fast. Japan didn't have the resources to afford someone of his caliber, and with the global surge in dungeon activity, even the most powerful nations were reluctant to send their elite forces abroad. The Prime Minister's voice carried doubt. Would anyone willingly face the nightmare brewing within that gate? That's when Sugimoto spoke, cutting through the unease like a blade. His tone was calm, yet resolute. "There's one man who will accept," he said. "As long as the price is right." All eyes turned toward him. "Yuri Orlov," Sugimoto continued. "He's a barrier-type hunter, one of the best, and for the right payment, he'll take the job. His abilities might be exactly what we need to contain the gate." The room fell into a thoughtful silence, the weight of that decision beginning to settle. Meanwhile, Jinwoo cruised back to the guild office, his thoughts drifting as the city passed by outside his window. He had hit level 101 now, just a few days past acquiring the key to the mysterious Kartanon Temple at level 100. Every one of his job-specific skills had grown sharper with his recent advancement. His mind wandered. What would level 102 bring? He smiled faintly, thinking about Jinho. His friend and vice guild master was proving himself invaluable, driven by a fiery determination. But Jinwoo knew that drive alone wasn't enough. They needed to expand. It was time to begin recruiting. He pulled into the guild's private lot, stepping out of the car just as something, or someone, caught his eye. Across the lot, a familiar figure stood, Cha Hai-in. She spotted him the moment he noticed her. Her expression shifted, surprised, almost startled. And without a word, she turned and began walking away, briskly, as if trying to vanish before he could speak. Jinwoo blinked, confused, and then a challenge sparked in his chest. Without hesitation, he activated Flash. In a blur, he appeared in front of her, cutting off her escape. Hai-in stopped in her tracks, her wide eyes meeting his as silence hung in the air between them. Jinwoo didn't say a word at first. He just looked at her, trying to read the sudden distance in her expression, and wondering what she was so afraid of. Jinwoo was genuinely puzzled by her behavior. Why was Cha Hai-in avoiding him? And what was she doing near the guild office in the first place? Before he could ask, she spoke first. Quiet, a little embarrassed. She explained that her car was still in the parking lot, a leftover detail from the last time they'd used Shadow Exchange. Jinwoo nodded slowly, but there was more to her presence here. He could feel it. Then, almost hesitantly, she asked if he had a moment to talk. Her expression was unreadable, but her mind was racing, clouded with confusion over a photo she'd seen of Jinwoo with Soo-hyun, jealousy she didn't want to admit, and a deeper ache. Why hadn't he ever considered recruiting her, despite her being an S-rank hunter? Trying to stay composed, Hae-in managed to shift the topic, saying she had a message for him. A message from Min Byung-gyu. That caught Jinwoo's attention instantly. His expression sharpened as he gestured for them to continue the conversation upstairs. Inside the quiet guild office, Hae-in was surprised by how empty it felt. Jinwoo's vice guild master was apparently still out, and the realization that she was alone with Jinwoo made her nerves spike. Still, he remained focused, and once seated, asked her directly, how had Byung-gyu left her a message? She took a breath, recounting the strange experience. It had been sudden. A voice reached out to her, and then, without warning, the shadow of Min Byung-gyu appeared before her eyes. His tone had been urgent. He warned her that there was something dangerous hidden within Jinwoo, something even he hadn't fully understood. The strangest part? Byung-gyu admitted that he felt at peace in his shadowy resurrection, as though being part of Jinwoo's army wasn't a curse, but a comfort. His final words came with a chilling weight, a warning about Jinwoo's power, that there was more to it than anyone realized. But before he could elaborate, a blinding light surrounded Hae-in, cutting the message short. All she had left were his haunting final words and a growing sense of unease. Later, back in the field, Jinwoo continued his usual routine, clearing dungeons alongside Jinho. But Hae-in's words stayed with him, echoing in his thoughts. Could it be true? Was there something more to his power than the system had shown him? Beside him, Jinho chatted casually, reminiscing about their early days raiding low-tier dungeons. Jinwoo, half listening, reminded him not to talk while eating. Jinho chuckled, then suggested Jinwoo just let his soldiers handle the raid. With their power and independence, there wasn't much need for him to lift a finger. But Jinwoo shook his head. He couldn't let himself rely on them too much. Not yet, because deep down, he knew. Understanding the origin of his powers wasn't just about becoming a stronger hunter anymore. It was about understanding who he truly was. Jinwoo had learned the hard way that staying too far from his shadow soldiers meant slower experience gain and less control. While they were powerful, they didn't always behave as intended without his supervision. His thoughts were interrupted by the sight of one of his shadow ants devouring a magic beast in an excessively gruesome way. Jinho grimaced in disgust, turning away. Trying to shift the mood, Jinho brought up Jinwoo's sister, Gina. "How's she doing?" he asked. "Still recovering," Jinwoo replied. "She just needs time to rest. I left her in good hands." He meant Beru, his most loyal shadow, and perhaps the most eccentric. Deciding to check in, Jinwoo closed his eyes and activated Shadow Exchange, linking his senses to Beru's. Instantly, his vision shifted to his sister's room. Gina was peacefully asleep, undisturbed. But something odd drew Jinwoo's attention. Beru was perched near the television, eyes locked onto a historical drama, speaking in an overly theatrical tone, mimicking the characters on screen. Jinwoo stifled a laugh. So that's where he got it from. Satisfied that Gina was safe, he turned his focus toward his mother. But just as he cycled through the shared senses again, a strange sound filled his ears. Running water. Confused, Jinwoo redirected his view, only to recoil in shock. He had accidentally connected to the shadow near Cha-Hai-in, catching her in the middle of a bath. Jinwoo instantly severed the link, eyes snapping open. "Hey, you good?" Jinho asked, raising a brow. "Looked like you spaced out for a second." "Yeah," Just a weird moment, Jinwoo muttered, brushing it off. Still flustered, he considered making it up to Hei In. Maybe dinner, as an apology. He could only hope she hadn't noticed. Jinho, oblivious to the mishap, moved on. Oh, did you hear about the S-rank gate in Shinjuku? If it's not cleared in 3 days, Japan's in for a dungeon break. I heard, Jinwoo replied. They reached out already. You thinking of going? Jinwoo didn't answer right away. His thoughts were elsewhere, on something more pressing. Reaching into his inventory, he summoned the black key. It materialized in his hand with a faint hiss. The key to the Cartenon Temple. It wasn't just another dungeon. It was a summons from the system itself. Jinwoo stared at the key, his mind heavy with questions. The nature of his power, the truth behind the system, and the reason it had chosen him. He knew what came next wouldn't just change him as a hunter. It could change everything. With only 1 day remaining before the black key could be used, Jinwoo felt a quiet certainty settle in his chest. The truth behind his powers, and perhaps the system itself, was finally within reach. For now, though, he had other responsibilities. Turning back to Jinho, he reminded him they still had work to finish. As soon as Jinho wolfed down the last bite of his meal, he quickly followed Jinwoo back into the dungeon, ready to continue. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, anticipation was building fast. Reporters from across the globe crowded Japan's airports, all waiting for a glimpse of Yuri Orlov, the enigmatic and powerful S-rank hunter from Russia. Cameras flashed as Yuri arrived, his every step tracked and documented. Unfazed by the attention, he greeted the press with a wide, cocky grin. He carried himself with the effortless charisma of someone who believed the world already knew his name. When asked about his plan to contain the S-rank gate in Shinjuku, Yuri confidently outlined his approach. He spoke of a massive magic circle that would be drawn around the gate, fueled by ambient mana. It was a method he had employed successfully before. The key, he explained, was to install monocrystals across Tokyo. These crystals would act as energy reservoirs, gradually powering the circle until it became a fully autonomous barrier, one strong enough to seal even an S-rank gate. Doubt lingered in the reporters' questions. Could he truly manage such a task alone? Yuri shrugged off their skepticism. No, he couldn't maintain it by himself indefinitely, but the city itself, once prepared properly, would keep the barrier alive. It's just like starting a car, he quipped. Once the engine's running, it drives itself. He ended the interview with theatrical flair. I'm going to save all your lives, he said, flashing his teeth. Try to remember that when you write your headlines. Soon after, Yuri arrived at the Japanese Hunter Association headquarters, where the nation's top guildmasters and strategists awaited. Known as the world's greatest support-type hunter, his reputation preceded him. He entered casually, drink in hand, and introduced himself with exaggerated confidence. After a few polite formalities, he cut straight to business. He praised the decision to evacuate civilians, but was quick to criticize what he saw as a fatal flaw. The operation lacked manpower. Sugimoto, standing in for the Blade Guild, admitted that only 6 S-rank hunters were available for the raid. Each guild had to keep 1 S-rank member back to guard gates appearing elsewhere in the country. Even the Blade Guild, once Japan's strongest, could only send 3. Yuri raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. He slammed his empty glass down on the table and let out a scoff. This plan won't save your country, he said flatly. Then came his offer, $10 million per day to maintain the barrier and keep the gate sealed. He compared himself to Thomas Andre, one of the world's strongest hunters, reminding them that his rate was, in fact, a bargain. A small price to pay to stop a disaster, he added with a smirk. Sugimoto was stunned. The room fell silent as the number settled in. Hoshino leaned toward Tawata, who knew Russian, asking for clarification. He's serious, Tawata replied, brows furrowed. And that's not even the worst part. With a smug grin, Yuri leaned forward. You either pay me or risk everything for the sake of saving some pocket change." The Japanese hunters remained silent, unsure how to respond. Yuri's confidence was overwhelming. He laughed, mocking the situation. "Do you really have the luxury of being picky?" he asked, his tone dripping with arrogance. Then he pushed further. "Even if you begged on your knees, licking my boots, it still wouldn't be enough." Sugimoto stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Do you truly believe you have the power to speak that way?" Yuri didn't flinch. "Of course I do. I'm worth more than all the clowns standing behind you combined." The insult was too much. Hoshino and Tawata lunged toward him, but before they could get close, they froze midair. An invisible force wrapped around them, locking their bodies in place. An unseen barrier had stopped them in their tracks. Yuri chuckled darkly, watching them struggle. "Go ahead, try to move," he taunted. Despite being seasoned S-rank hunters, they couldn't break free. Hoshino stared in disbelief, while Tawata felt like invisible chains had wrapped around her. The rest of the Japanese hunters looked on in stunned silence. Yuri leaned back, arms crossed. "I'll seal the gate for you. I'll even pretend this little tantrum never happened," he said, his tone almost playful. "All you have to do is pay." Sugimoto, tension in his jaw, stayed composed. He knew the price was high, and the government would hesitate, but it might be the only option left. After a long pause, he reached for his phone. "Give me a moment," he said to Yuri. "I'll make the call." Yuri smiled, victorious. And with that, the deal was set in motion. Jinwoo had attempted to slip out of the apartment quietly, but his mother, Kyung-hee, called out to him before he could leave. He paused, sitting back down for a moment. Concerned, she asked if there was anything she should worry about. Jinwoo quickly reassured her, explaining that he just had an appointment, promising he'd be back soon. With that, he left the apartment. Stepping outside, Jinwoo summoned the black key. The time had finally come. A notification appeared, showing the location where the key could be used. To his surprise, it was near his sister Gina's school. At the school gate, a couple of Hunter Association employees were discussing the situation. They were relieved that the school was closed, commenting that they wouldn't be able to handle the students if they were present. They also noted that a gate had appeared at the same spot once again. Cloaked in stealth, Jinwoo approached unnoticed. When one of the employees stepped forward to stop him, Jinwoo lowered his hood, revealing himself with a calm but commanding presence. The female employee recognized him from a previous encounter at a B-rank gate and was surprised to see him. Jinwoo asked how long the gate had been open, and she informed him that it had been 3 days. Jinwoo quickly realized the system had revealed the gate's location, but not the exact timing of its appearance. With 3 days having already passed, Jinwoo immediately sensed danger. Although the gate was classified as C rank, something felt off. He asked if any hunters had entered the gate, and the employee confirmed that an assault squad had gone in 2 hours ago. Jinwoo, without hesitation, instructed her to call them back, warning that the entire squad was in danger and would not survive if they stayed inside. The employee, confused and alarmed by Jinwoo's urgency, pointed out that the gate was only C rank. But Jinwoo, focused on rescuing the hunters, walked straight toward the gate, insisting there was no time to explain. Determined, he told her he'd bring the squad back himself, leaving her bewildered as he disappeared into the gate. Inside the dungeon, the floor was littered with the carcasses of magic beasts, a grim testament to the strike squad's battles. They now stood before the boss room, but something was wrong. No matter what they tried, the door wouldn't budge, even their magic proving useless. Frustration grew as they debated their next move, unwilling to turn back after coming so far. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, Jinwoo. His unexpected arrival startled the group, who initially didn't recognize him. Jinwoo calmly introduced himself as the survivor of the infamous double dungeon. One of the hunters, recognizing his name, whispered in awe, "Sung Jinwoo, the S-rank hunter." The group's surprise quickly turned to alarm as Jinwoo warned them of the danger they were in, urging them to leave immediately. Despite the C-rank classification, he sensed something far more perilous lurking ahead. Ignoring their disbelief, Jinwoo stepped forward to inspect the door. A notification appeared. Only he could see it. It revealed that the gate to the Kartanen temple was locked and required the black key to open. Jinwoo quickly understood that this dungeon was different from his past experiences, requiring him to use the key. As soon as he inserted it, the door creaked open, revealing the path forward. The strike squad was stunned. After all their efforts to open the door, Jinwoo had done it with ease. Still, some members of the squad, especially from the Dragon Guild, were defiant. They reminded Jinwoo that they had purchased the raid permit for this dungeon, and even though he was an S rank, he had no right to tell them what to do. Jinwoo, understanding their position, told them he wouldn't stop them from entering, but warned them of the dangers. One hunter, eager to prove his bravery, stepped forward and entered the room. As soon as the man crossed the threshold, a notification popped up, only visible to Jinwoo. It warned that the person without the key had been denied access. Instantly, a massive sword swung down from the ceiling, aimed directly at the hunter's head. But before it could strike, Jinwoo swiftly pulled him back, saving his life just in time. The sword crashed into the ground, shattering the stone tiles beneath it. Terrified, the squad members screamed as monstrous doorkeepers, guardians of the temple, attacked. Jinwoo wasted no time, throwing the frightened hunter out of the room. He turned to the rest of the squad and warned them again. These monsters were far more dangerous than they realized. He urged them to report to the Hunter Association that this was a double dungeon and to leave immediately. Once the squad stood in silence, Jinwoo stepped through the door, alone. A notification confirmed that the one who held the key had entered. The door slammed shut behind him with a heavy thud. The room Jinwoo entered was massive, its sheer size overwhelming. Towering statues lined the walls, each one intricately carved and standing as silent sentinels. At the far end, a colossal statue loomed ominously over the space. Everything looked just as Jinwoo remembered from his previous encounter, but something felt different this time. Jinwoo himself had changed. With his newfound strength, he could now see the statues for what they truly were. They weren't magic beasts as they had seemed before. They were mere puppets, controlled by something far more sinister. As Jinwoo's sharp senses scanned the room, he detected a hidden presence, an aura so dark and malevolent that it would have been impossible to notice before. Jinwoo approached one particular statue, the only one holding a stone tablet. Unlike the others, this one exuded an eerie aura. As he drew closer, he spoke. "It was you." The statue remained still, offering no response. Frustration surged within Jinwoo, and just as he was about to question further, something chilling happened. The statue's lips curled into a smile, its red eyes flickering to life. "At last, you have arrived?" A twisted voice echoed through the hall, laced with satisfaction. The time for answers had finally come. Meanwhile, across Japan, the nation was glued to their screens, eagerly watching Yuri Orlov's interview. He had promised to protect Japan from the looming threat of an S-rank gate. In Korea, Hunters Association President Go Gun-hee also watched the broadcast, his face etched with concern. He wasn't fully convinced that Yuri could seal such a powerful gate, but one thing was certain. If Yuri failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. Chairman Go Gun-hee turned to his assistant, Woo Jin-chul, and asked for an update on Hunter Sung Jinwoo's recent activities. Jin-chul handed over a list, explaining that Jinwoo had been busy raiding numerous gates around Seoul. The Ajin Guild, Jinwoo's personal guild, had requested permits for all the gates listed. Gun-hee raised an eyebrow, intrigued. It was unusual for a small, newly formed guild to target so many gates that were typically controlled by major guilds like White Tiger, Hunters, and Fiend. Jin-chul noted that some friction might arise because of this, but Gun-hee simply chuckled at the thought. The idea that a single man's guild could rival a major guild was both amusing and fascinating. Jinchul added that the Arjin Guild had also requested to handle nearby gates for the next week, though the reasons were unclear. Without seeing any issue, Gunhee agreed without hesitation. Just as they finished discussing, Jinchul's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He asked for permission to step aside, which Gunhee granted as he himself had an appointment to attend. Jinchul answered the call, and his expression quickly turned serious. The caller reported alarming news. A new gate had appeared at the same school where a group of orcs had attacked before. Even more shocking was the discovery of a double dungeon inside the gate. The final detail left Jinchul stunned. Hunter Sung Jinwoo had entered the double dungeon. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, Jinwoo stood before a colossal statue with 6 wings, resembling an angel holding a stone slate. The wind howled through the vast hall, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Without warning, the slate began to crack, and in a sudden, violent motion, the statue smashed it into pieces. Debris flew around Jinwoo as the remnants crumbled at his feet. The statue spoke, acknowledging that Jinwoo had finally arrived. It seemed to mock the importance of the slate's commandments, hinting that they might not have mattered at all. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed, and he asked if it was truly acceptable to destroy something so significant. But the statue corrected him, explaining that while the commandments once held meaning, they were now obsolete. Jinwoo, growing impatient, demanded to know if the statue was the one who had summoned him to this place. With a sinister grin, the statue confirmed that it had indeed called him here. However, when Jinwoo asked if the statue was a monster, it dismissed the question, telling him he was focusing on the wrong thing. The statue clapped its hands, drawing Jinwoo's attention elsewhere. It suggested that instead of questioning the statue's identity, Jinwoo should have been asking about his own. This revelation marked the beginning of Jinwoo's final test. As the sound of stone cracking filled the room, the other statues began to turn their heads toward him. Slowly, they stepped off their pedestals, weapons raised, ready to attack. Jinwoo, always prepared, summoned his shadow soldiers to fight. But before they could act, the statue snapped its fingers, stopping them in their tracks. This test was meant for Jinwoo alone. No help, no shortcuts. A notification appeared, informing him that all his job-exclusive skills, potions, and rewards from leveling up or completing quests were now restricted. Everything that had once given him an edge in combat was disabled. The statue emphasized that it was only interested in evaluating Jinwoo's personal strength, not the abilities of his shadow soldiers. Jinwoo frowned at each restriction, but there was no time to dwell on it. The advantages he had relied on were now gone, leaving him with only his own strength. He couldn't leave until the test was complete, so he prepared to face the challenge ahead with nothing but his raw power. The stone figures began to advance, their heavy footsteps echoing ominously through the chamber. Jinwoo watched them carefully, remembering how powerful these puppets were. Once, they had nearly killed him, but now the tables had turned. One of the figures swung a massive sword at him, cutting through the air with deadly speed. Jinwoo, realizing his inventory was still accessible, decided he would defeat them using only his strength. As the sword came crashing down, he caught it with his bare hands. In one swift motion, he snapped the blade in half. Without hesitation, he grabbed the broken piece of the sword and hurled it with incredible force. The shard flew through the air and pierced the stone figure's temple with deadly precision. Not pausing for a second, Jinwoo darted forward. The damaged figure struggled to pull the shard from its head, but Jinwoo was faster. He leaped into the air, driving the shard even deeper into the figure's skull with a precise kick, causing the entire statue to shatter. Another stone figure approached, swinging a massive axe. Jinwoo tightened his grip on his daggers, ready for the strike. With a swift motion, he blocked the incoming attack. The sound of metal clashing echoed through the room. In an instant, Jinwoo countered, slashing the axe in two. As he leaped into the air, the stone figure tracked his movement, but it was too slow. Jinwoo came down with a crushing blow, dragging his daggers across its head and shattering its skull with precise force. Next, A figure armed with a bow took aim and fired an arrow at Jinwoo with incredible speed. Jinwoo dodged effortlessly, the arrow whizzing past him. The figure quickly fired another, but Jinwoo sliced it in two mid-air with his daggers. Without missing a beat, Jinwoo jumped toward the broken arrow halves, his movements a blur. He kicked one of the pieces with brutal force, turning it into a missile. The shard struck the stone archer's head, shattering it into fragments. As the figure collapsed, Jinwoo's eyes blazed with determination. One by one, he cut down the advancing statues, parrying and blocking each attack with precision. He moved like a whirlwind, dismantling the stone figures with ease. His heart pounded with anticipation, knowing the true challenge was yet to come. This was the moment Jinwoo had been waiting for, the challenge that made him feel truly alive. His movements were fluid and precise, like a well-rehearsed dance of destruction. Wielding the demon monarch's daggers, he sliced through the stone figures as if they were fragile clay, each strike shattering them with ease. His body, mind, and weapons had become one, transforming him into an unstoppable force. As the statues crumbled one by one, the chamber echoed with the sound of destruction. From across the room, the angelic statue with 6 wings trembled in delight, watching Jinwoo's deadly grace with sinister satisfaction. It marveled at how far this mere human had come, the power he now wielded far surpassing what the statue had anticipated. Jinwoo's daggers moved with blinding speed, effortlessly blocking and countering the relentless strikes from the stone figures. The once elusive and seemingly teleporting movements of his enemies were now crystal clear to him. He could follow every step, every swing, with flawless precision. His blades clashed against stone, sending shards flying, but Jinwoo remained unfazed. He had grown stronger, and it showed in every cut and every deflected blow. The angelic statue, still observing from afar, smiled wider. It was clear to the statue that Jinwoo had surpassed its expectations, but the test wasn't over yet. The sinister grin on the statue's face widened as a deep rumble filled the room, drawing Jinwoo's attention. Jinwoo's gaze shifted to the massive colossus seated on the throne at the far end of the hall. The giant figure, dormant until now, slowly opened its glowing red eyes. The ground trembled beneath its weight as the colossus gripped the armrests of its throne and began to rise. The grinding sound of stone against stone filled the chamber as the giant stood to its full, towering height. The sheer size of the colossus was enough to send a wave of unease through the room. Each of its steps shook the ground, sending tremors through the lair as it moved forward with purpose. Its overwhelming presence filled the air with tension, and every fiber of Jinwoo's being braced for the battle to come. The angelic statue, watching with anticipation, called out in a voice filled with excitement, "Now the time has come to worship the god." Without hesitation, Jinwoo surged forward once more, decapitating yet another stone figure with a swift slice from his daggers. Despite the seemingly endless number of stone soldiers that rushed at him, Jinwoo cut them down with calculated precision. But his instincts told him that something far more dangerous was approaching. He glanced up, locking eyes with the massive colossus. Its once dormant eyes now blazed with an intense red light, and in an instant, Jinwoo realized the real threat had arrived. The battle had just begun. Jinwoo's heart raced as the colossus prepared its next deadly blast. Without hesitation, he dropped the dagger from his left hand and extended his arm toward the advancing stone figures. With a surge of energy, he activated Commander's touch. Power flooded through him as 5 of the stone soldiers were immediately seized by his will, crushed together mid-air like puppets on strings. Just as they collided, the colossus unleashed its devastating attack. A brilliant red laser beam shot from the colossus's eyes with a searing intensity. The deafening sizzle of the blast filled the air as it collided with Jinwoo's improvised shield, the bound statues. The force of the beam shook the entire temple. Jinwoo felt the overwhelming power of the laser, watching as the statues were vaporized in mere seconds, melting into molten rubble. But it had served its purpose, buying him the few precious moments he needed to leap backward, avoiding the full force of the attack. As the heat and dust began to settle, Jinwoo's gaze locked on a new notification flashing before him. Commander's touch has been upgraded to Dominator's authority. A smirk crossed his face. His skill had just reached its final form. But despite the small victory, Jinwoo knew the danger he was facing. Even at his current level, a direct hit from that laser would mean instant death. He needed to take the Colossus down, and fast if he had any chance of surviving this test. The eerie red light in the Colossus's eyes intensified, signaling another attack was imminent. Jinwoo tapped his foot lightly on the ground, and with a sharp crack, he launched himself forward. His body became a blur of motion, darting toward the massive figure. The Colossus, reacting slowly, raised its gigantic foot and slammed it down, trying to crush him. But Jinwoo's speed was far beyond what the giant could track. He weaved effortlessly out of the foot's path, missing him entirely. Jinwoo closed the distance to the Colossus's feet, crouching low as he prepared his next move. He knew he only had one shot at this. The Colossus's glowing red eyes tracked him, preparing to fire another lethal beam. Jinwoo focused all his energy into his legs and propelled himself upward with all his might, rocketing into the air. As he ascended, he could feel the intense heat radiating from the Colossus's deadly gaze, tracking him once again. But Jinwoo had a plan. As he soared higher, he extended his hand and activated Dominator's authority, but instead of pulling the giant statue toward him, he reversed the force, dragging himself closer to the Colossus. Just as another red beam shot from the Colossus's eyes, Jinwoo narrowly avoided it, the heat crackling through the air where he had just been. The gravitational pull of Dominator's authority yanked him straight toward the Colossus's shoulder. The upgrade had made a crucial difference. Jinwoo now had the power to manipulate even this massive foe. As he flew closer, he gripped his remaining dagger tightly, his mind focused on the task ahead. With the skill mutilation activated, Jinwoo surged forward with lightning speed. His body was a blur as he raced across the Colossus's enormous shoulder. The air shimmered with the speed of his movements, and bright silver lines illuminated the giant's stony face as he struck with the Demon Monarch's dagger. His blade slashed through the air, leaving trails of destruction in its wake. The Colossus, now marked with glowing lines from Jinwoo's rapid strikes, groaned in response to the overwhelming assault. Jinwoo's focus remained sharp, knowing that every second counted in this deadly game. Despite Jinwoo's speed and precision, his strikes barely left a mark. Each blow he dealt to the Colossus only resulted in shallow scratches. His dagger, known for cutting through the toughest enemies, was struggling to make a dent against the massive stone figure. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. The damage was insignificant, mere surface wounds against a foe built like a fortress. Realizing the futility of his current approach, Jinwoo decided to switch tactics. If his blade couldn't penetrate the Colossus's dense stone, then he would rely on sheer power instead. His gaze locked onto a small crevice on the statue's face, a potential weak spot. Without a second thought, he leapt onto the giant, gripping its face as if scaling a mountainside. His hands latched firmly onto the cracks, his focus intensifying. Drawing in a deep breath, Jinwoo funneled every ounce of mana into his arms. His muscles bulged with the raw power coursing through them, veins throbbing as he prepared for his next move. With all the force he could muster, he unleashed a devastating punch. The impact echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap, reverberating off the stone walls. The Colossus faltered slightly, its once serene face registering a hint of shock. The angelic figure overseeing the test seemed momentarily caught off guard, never anticipating such a direct assault on its creation. Jinwoo didn't stop there. He followed up with a flurry of powerful punches, each one harder and more forceful than the last. The relentless rhythm of his blows filled the lair with loud, bone-shaking sounds. His fists crashed against the Colossus's face, sending cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. Fueled by fury and the need to prove his strength, Jinwoo showed no mercy, each strike widening the fissures in the stone. Finally, with one last earth-shattering punch, the Colossus couldn't hold itself together any longer. The giant statue crumbled, collapsing to the ground with a deafening crash. The entire lair shook as the massive figure fell, sending a thick cloud of dust billowing into the air. As the dust settled, Jinwoo stood tall, his form emerging unscathed amidst the chaos. But the battle wasn't over. The remaining stone statues, seizing the moment, launched themselves at him from all sides. Their movements were swift, their stone arms reaching out to strike. Jinwoo, however, was quicker. Before they could close in, he raised his hand and activated Dominator's authority. Instantly, the statues froze in midair, helpless against his power. With a sharp, commanding gesture, Jinwoo sent their heads slamming into the ground. The force was enough to shatter them completely, their bodies crumbling into lifeless rubble. The ground rumbled briefly, before falling still, the chamber falling silent once more. Jinwoo clenched his fist, feeling the surge of strength from the intense battle. He could feel it. He had grown stronger, more powerful than ever before. His victory over the Colossus had brought him closer to his ultimate goal. But then, a slow, deliberate sound cut through the silence. Clapping. Jinwoo's sharp gaze turned toward the source of the noise, his eyes narrowing as he saw the angelic statue standing there. Its expression was unreadable, but Jinwoo's patience had reached its limit. Without hesitation, he demanded answers. Yet instead of responding with clarity, the angelic figure let out a cold, hollow laugh that echoed eerily throughout the chamber, as if it came from all directions at once. Before Jinwoo could react, a sudden notification flashed before his eyes, drawing his attention. The urgent quest message carried an ominous weight, sending a chill down his spine. It was clear something far more dangerous was on the horizon. The angel's voice, disembodied and unsettling, echoed once more through the lair, declaring itself as Jinwoo's final test. The last challenge stood between him and the truth he sought, the final obstacle before the answers he had been chasing. The room grew still, the weight of the impending battle pressing down on him. Time became Jinwoo's greatest adversary, with only 10 minutes separating him from death. His heart would stop if he failed to overcome the challenge before him. As each second slipped away, frustration gnawed at him. Yet, even with the urgency, he demanded to know the true identity of the angelic statue. A notification flashed, reminding him that his question had already been dismissed. But as if offering a final cryptic answer, the statue revealed its truth. It was the architect of the system itself. The surveillance team arrived swiftly, falling into formation under the command of a sharp-eyed female operative. She moved with authority, assigning positions as tension simmered in the air. At the center of it all stood Woo Jin-chul, leader of the team and a seasoned hunter himself. He had mustered 7 of the association's finest, elite hunters with impressive records. Yet, despite their prowess, Jin-chul harbored no illusions. This wasn't a team meant to assist Sung Jinwoo in battle. This was a last resort response, a measure prepared for the worst. His gaze locked on the gate before them. It pulsed with unnatural energy, a dense torrent of magic power that warped the very air. The pressure was suffocating, almost sickening. Jinchul instinctively stepped back, a cold sweat tracing his spine as the oppressive mana pressed against him like a growing storm. "This isn't right," he muttered under his breath, unsettled by the monstrous aura. He turned to his team. "Do you feel that?" A nearby hunter gave a grim nod. "It's growing stronger by the minute. The Hunters Guild is on standby. They're ready to mobilize if we give the word." "What about Choijong Inn and Chahai Inn? They've agreed to join if it becomes necessary." Knowing they might be walking into a nightmare, Jinchul didn't hesitate. "Send the emergency request. We'll need all the backup we can get." Meanwhile, within the gate, Jinwoo stood face to face with the architect, the entity behind every trial, every torment. The atmosphere was electric, thick with the promise of violence. No words were exchanged, only the quiet before chaos. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The architect lunged, impossibly fast. Jinwoo moved to dash past. Too late. The architect intercepted, fists exploding forward with lightning speed. Reacting purely on instinct, Jinwoo crossed his arms to block. The impact was brutal. A thunderous crash echoed as the blows sent him flying, his body slamming into the stone floor with bone-jarring force. Cracks spiderwebbed beneath him as dust and rubble burst outward. Groaning, Jinwoo barely had time to rise before the architect was on him again. A colossal fist barreled down, missing his head by inches as he rolled aside. The punch struck the wall with shattering force, carving a gaping hole into the chamber. The assault intensified. Fists rained down like meteors, the architect pressing its advantage with inhuman precision. Any single blow could have ended a top-tier hunter. Yet Jinwoo endured. His movements honed, reactive, precise. He weaved, blocked, deflected. 8 fists moved to crush him, but with just 2 arms, he parried every strike. Each movement was calculated, each block a miracle of reflex and strength. The architect grinned, relishing the barrage, but Jinwoo was still standing, still fighting, still unbroken. The architect's eyes narrowed, tracking only flickers and afterimages as Jinwoo's movements blurred beyond perception. His attacks were missing. Every strike dodged or deflected with uncanny precision. Then, just as it processed the shift in battle, one of its punches connected. A brutal impact crashed into Jinwoo's jaw, sending a shockwave through his body. Blood welled from a cut on his forehead, dribbling down and stinging his eye. But Jinwoo didn't waver. Pain lanced through him, yet it only fueled his resolve. He'd had enough. His body lowered, coiling like a spring, then exploded forward. His fist rocketed toward the architect with all the strength he could summon. The impact was thunderous. The architect was launched across the chamber, tumbling mid-air before slamming into the ground. Dust and debris erupted from the crater it left in its wake. Yet it stood again almost instantly, planting its feet with renewed interest, a wide grin stretching across its face. For the first time, the architect was entertained. It had never considered that a human, a mere byproduct of the system, could challenge it. But standing across from Jinwoo now, bruised but unbroken, it understood. This was no ordinary opponent. This was a warrior forged through death and battle. Blood blurred Jinwoo's vision, but his mind was razor-sharp. The architect had summoned him the moment he crossed level 101, assuming he'd be easy prey. A final trial. But Jinwoo wasn't here to lose. He was here for answers. Why had the architect created the system? Why had he been chosen? What was the purpose of it all? The architect chuckled, amused by the sudden questions. "So now you ask?" it said, eyes gleaming. "Worried you'll kill me before I can answer?" To the architect, defeat was still an abstract concept, one it treated more like a punchline than a possibility. But Jinwoo didn't give it the chance to joke further. Realizing close combat gave the architect the upper hand, he retreated, putting distance between them. With a sharp breath, he activated Dominator's authority, a skill of overwhelming force, perfect for ranged combat. The architect merely raised its arms in response. The same technique. 2 titanic forces surged forward, colliding midair. The result was catastrophic. Gravitational pressure exploded outward, scorching the earth, shattering the stone floor beneath them, and rippling through the chamber like a shockwave from the gods. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. He understood now. The battle ahead wasn't just a clash of strength. If the architect could wield the same abilities, then long-range tactics would be useless. Jinwoo realized this instantly. Across from him, the architect stood tall, all 8 arms outstretched like a deity of destruction. A low hum filled the air as the scattered weapons around the chamber began to vibrate, resonating with an ominous power. One by one, they floated upward, suspended by invisible force, each weapon pulled toward the architect like iron to a magnet. Now armed with 8 distinct instruments of death, a sword, a spear, a blade, an axe, a hammer, and more. Each one gripped tightly with Dominator's authority. The architect loomed like a war god. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes, tightening his grip on his daggers. He needed answers. How could the architect command such power? How had he created a system that rivaled divine design? The architect, sensing Jinwoo's thoughts, chuckled, cold and mechanical. "You were never my choice," he said flatly. "In truth, I opposed your selection." He gestured to himself. "I am the architect, the moderator. The system was my creation, yes. But you were a deviation. Everything, every outcome, was scripted from the beginning." Jinwoo's heart pounded, not from fear, but from urgency. The countdown in his mind ticked on. 7 minutes left. No more time for questions. It was now or never. The architect moved first, a blur of motion. In a single leap, he crashed down in front of Jinwoo, the impact fracturing the ground and sending shards of stone flying. He struck like a whirlwind, 8 weapons moving in deadly harmony, each attack calculated to kill. Blades sliced through the air, the hammer cracked stone, the spear struck with sniper precision. The air screamed with each swing, the chamber echoing with the clash of weapon against ground, wall and steel. Jinwoo stood in the eye of the storm. He controlled his breathing, calmed his heart. His gaze locked on the architect. Amid the chaos, something inside him awakened. His senses stretched beyond normal human perception, beyond even what a hunter should be capable of. Even with blood streaming into one eye, blurring his vision, he could feel the trajectory of every weapon. He danced through the storm of blades, his movements honed to a razor's edge. A sword passed so close it grazed his cheek, but missed. And in that instant, Jinwoo countered, slashing back with impossible speed. His awareness had evolved. Every heartbeat, every breath of mana in the room became data he instinctively processed. He dodged, parried, struck, each motion faster, more precise. The architect faltered. This wasn't what he expected. He had unleashed his full power, yet Jinwoo wasn't faltering. He was rising. With each second, Jinwoo's speed increased, his precision sharpened, his blows struck deeper. And for the first time, the architect, eternal and unshaken, felt something wholly unfamiliar. Doubt. Jinwoo's blade cut through the air like a scythe, striking true. One of the architect's arms was cleaved clean off. The severed limb flew across the chamber, crashing into the far wall with a dull thud. The architect staggered back, clutching the stump, his expression twisted in disbelief and pain. A mere human had wounded him. Not just wounded, dismantled him. Through the haze of fury and confusion, the architect's eyes locked onto Jinwoo. He saw it now, buried deep within the hunter's core. Something ancient and immense stirred, not just raw strength, not just skill, but a fragment of power that shouldn't belong to any human. Jinwoo, meanwhile, was still and composed, his breathing even, his gaze cold and focused. No arrogance, no rage, just resolve. Pure, unwavering resolve. The architect let out a furious roar that shook the stone walls. His pride, once untouchable, now lay in tatters. In desperation, he summoned the remaining statues. Shattered or whole, broken or intact, they all began to rise at his call. Lifeless marble now animated by fury and command. The ground trembled as dozens of statues prepared to swarm. Jinwoo didn't flinch. With just over 3 minutes remaining, he had no time to spare. He raised his hand. Dominator's authority flared to life. A pulse of force exploded outward, tearing through the advancing enemies. Statues were hurled backward like ragdolls, shattering on impact with the walls and floor. In the chaos, Jinwoo dashed forward, a blur of black steel and purpose. His daggers gleamed as he weaved through falling debris and lunging statues. Just as he closed in on the architect, the colossal guardian statue moved, its massive stone fist descending like a meteor. Jinwoo twisted mid-run, leaping to the side just in time. The impact shattered the floor, obliterating a score of lesser statues in its wake. But Jinwoo kept moving, circling, adapting, relentless. At the heart of the battlefield, the architect's arms lashed out like blades, attacking with desperate fury. Jinwoo danced through them, every step precise, every slash of his dagger bringing the architect closer to defeat. With a surge of strength, Jinwoo landed another devastating blow, slicing off a second arm. The architect reeled, his composure cracking. Enraged, he swung his sword with both fury and fear. But Jinwoo met the strike head-on, his dagger flashing with explosive energy. Sparks flew, the shockwave rippling through the chamber. And then, impact. A shield slammed into Jinwoo's back from behind. One of the statues, damaged but still mobile, had closed in without a sound and struck him with brutal force. The blow drove the air from his lungs and sent him stumbling forward. Pain flared through his spine, but he didn't fall. His footing held. Jinwoo growled under his breath, the fire in his eyes burning brighter. This wasn't over. Not yet. Jinwoo winced as the blow struck him from behind, his body briefly staggering from the impact. Gritting his teeth, he spun around and locked eyes with the culprit, the shield-wielding statue that had ambushed him once before. Recognition flickered, followed by a surge of fury. He remembered this one. He remembered the blow, the pain, and the grudge that had been simmering ever since. Without a moment's hesitation, Jinwoo launched himself into the air. Mana surged through his body, gathering at his elbow. He came down like a falling star, driving his strike straight into the statue's head. The force of the impact pulverized it into dust, an execution born of precision and rage. But he didn't stop. Fueled by the momentum of his fury, Jinwoo turned and charged straight for the architect. The architect's expression twisted with disbelief. He barely had time to process what he was seeing. Jinwoo was faster than ever before, moving with a fury that even the architect's calculations hadn't accounted for. In a flash, 2 more of the architect's arms were severed, the daggers slicing through them like paper. Then, with a final crushing blow, Jinwoo slammed him to the ground. The floor split beneath the weight of the impact, debris exploding outward as dust choked the air. For a moment, silence reigned. As the dust settled, Jinwoo emerged, calm, unflinching. He approached the fallen architect, each step heavy with finality. Raising his dagger, he pressed the blade against the architect's neck, his eyes unwavering. It was over. The architect exhaled slowly, the fight draining from him. "I concede," he said, his voice low but clear. "The test has ended." As the words left his mouth, the countdown timer that had loomed in the air blinked out, freezing in place. The battle had reached its conclusion. Raising a trembling finger, the architect pointed at Jinwoo. "The answer you seek, it lies within you," he said cryptically. Jinwoo's brow furrowed. "Within me?" What did that mean? Before he could speak, a new notification materialized before his eyes. Retrieving data from internal storage. Then, a simple prompt appeared. "Accept retrieval, YN." The architect's gaze locked with his one final time. "The choice is yours." Jinwoo stood in silence, his mind racing through 1,000 questions. But the decision had already been made. With calm resolve, he answered, "Yes." Instantly, darkness closed in around him. The world dissolved. Sound vanished. He floated weightlessly through an endless void. Not falling, not rising, just drifting, alone in the silence. Then, the system's voice echoed around him. "You have successfully retrieved the data." Suddenly, Jinwoo found himself hurtling through a dark tunnel, the momentum carrying him at breakneck speed. The tunnel stretched on, and with a final jolt, he was thrust into a blinding light. His eyes took a moment to adjust, and when they did, he gasped at the sight below him. An endless army of magical beasts stretched across the land, their numbers staggering. From high orcs to ice elves, goblins to giants, the creatures lined up in rows, their power evident in every stance. Jinwoo's heart raced as he processed the magnitude of what he was seeing. What were these creatures waiting for? Following their collective gaze, he saw it. Suspended in the sky was a colossal black shape. It looked like a dark lake, But it wasn't water. It was a gate, a massive one, blocking out the strangely purple sky above. Jinwoo's disbelief deepened. This was no longer Earth. The arid, brownish-red wasteland, the bizarre rock formations, and the sky's unnatural hue confirmed it. He wasn't on his home planet. The magical beasts below stirred, their focus unwavering as they watched the gate. If these creatures broke through and invaded Earth, humanity wouldn't stand a chance. Jinwoo couldn't shake the sense of dread that settled in his chest as he witnessed the sheer scale of the impending disaster. Then, the impossible happened. The gate, once intact, began to crack. The sound of shattering stone echoed across the battlefield as the gate split open. From the broken gate, silver-armored winged soldiers poured out, filling the sky. Their armor gleamed as they descended like a swarm of enraged bees. The magical beasts below roared, rallying to meet this new threat. A horn blared across the battlefield, signaling the start of the clash. The soldiers in silver armor descended, and the battle began. The air was filled with the sound of clashing weapons, shattered armor, and blood-curdling screams. But it became clear quickly that the soldiers had the upper hand. Their precision and overwhelming strength were unmatched. The magical beasts, fearsome in their own right, were no match for the soldiers' might. The tide of battle shifted rapidly in favor of the armored warriors, and Jinwoo realized that the annihilation of the magical beasts was imminent. However, just as victory seemed assured, something unexpected occurred. One by one, the silver soldiers froze, their bodies immobilized. A massive shadow began to spread across the battlefield, creeping over the blood-soaked ground like a tidal wave. Chilling screams echoed from nowhere, filling the air with an eerie sense of dread. Jinwoo's mind raced as he recognized the sensation. This was the ability to control shadows, a power he knew all too well. A towering knight clad entirely in black armor appeared on the battlefield, a dark aura radiating from both him and the steed he rode. The knight's presence was suffocating, his power undeniable. Jinwoo's heart skipped a beat as realization hit him. There was only one being capable of wielding such dark power, the Shadow Monarch. With an air of absolute command, the Shadow Monarch's gaze swept across the silver soldiers in the sky. His voice, deep and resonant, pierced the eerie stillness of the battlefield. Arise. That single word rippled through the air with an almost unnatural force, and immediately the ground trembled. Shadows began to shift, moving like waves across the blood-soaked earth. The once crimson battlefield was overtaken by an all-encompassing sea of black. The fallen soldiers, now reanimated as shadowy warriors, opened their glowing eyes, their forms pulsating with dark energy. Their roars and shrieks filled the air, an unsettling blend of battle cries and wailing screams that echoed throughout the desolate landscape. The monsters that had once perished now rose again, their blood thickened with darkness, giving them a newfound strength. Death had not claimed them. Instead, it had transformed them into something more terrifying, more powerful. Jinwoo, observing the spectacle before him, was awestruck. The Shadow Monarch had the ability to summon an endless legion of shadow soldiers, an unimaginable power far beyond anything Jinwoo could currently wield. It was a display of strength that left him in awe, a testament to the Shadow Monarch's terrifying might. The resurrected beasts charged forward, now possessed with dark energy, their once lifeless bodies moving with deadly intent. The battlefield, once dominated by the silver soldiers, was now a chaotic and violent war between two opposing armies. Black clashed against silver in a violent storm of explosions and destruction, the earth itself trembling beneath the force of their conflict. What had once been a one-sided slaughter was now a brutal, evenly matched war, all because of the arrival of a singular, overwhelming force, the Shadow Monarch. With his massive black steed, the Shadow Monarch charged into the fray, his sword swinging with unstoppable force. Every strike felled thousands of enemies, and with each fallen soldier, a new shadow warrior was born, rising to fight in his growing army. With a simple wave of his hand, the silver soldier's wings were ripped away, sending them plummeting from the skies to meet their end. Jinwoo recognized the skill instantly. The monarch was wielding Dominator's authority, the same power he himself had tapped into. Wherever the Shadow Monarch moved, devastation followed. The battlefield, once a place of intense struggle, was now a wasteland in his wake. Victory seemed all but assured for the monarch and his ever-growing army of reanimated monsters. But just as the tide of battle appeared to settle in his favor, something shifted. Jinwoo's eyes widened in shock as an ominous wind began to sweep across the battlefield. Suddenly, two massive gates, as colossal as the ones floating above, materialized behind the Shadow Monarch. From within these gates, two distinct groups of magic beasts emerged, adding a new level of intensity to the battle. The first group was composed of knights and soldiers, their banners fluttering as they charged into the fray. Jinwoo's eyes sharpened as he recognized the crests on their standards. Ricardo, Pathos, Loken, Ingras, and even the Radiru clan, to which Esil belonged. These were the noble clans from the Demon's Castle, renowned for their strength and fearsome power. The second group, however, was even more terrifying. A colossal wolf, towering like a mountain, stepped out of the gates, its massive paws sending tremors through the earth with every stomp. Its growl resonated across the battlefield, a deep guttural sound that sent a chill through the air. Behind the wolf, a horde of savage beasts followed, their howls merging into a symphony of monstrous roars. With the animal-type beasts and the demon clan now surrounding the Shadow Monarch and his army, the war reached a whole new level of devastation. The tide of battle shifted once again. The animal-type beasts and demons launched a brutal, coordinated assault on the Shadow Soldiers. The battlefield became a chaotic storm of attacks, with both sides giving no quarter. Yet, no matter how many Shadow Soldiers were obliterated, they regenerated almost instantly, rising once again to fight. Jinwoo, watching the incredible display, couldn't help but marvel at the power of the Shadow Monarch. If these were his own soldiers, Jinwoo would have run out of mana long ago, but the Shadow Monarch seemed to possess an endless well of energy that fueled his unstoppable army. Despite the ferocious onslaught from the demon clans and the animal-type beasts, the Shadow Soldiers kept regenerating, their numbers seemingly infinite. This raised troubling questions in Jinwoo's mind. The monsters didn't seem to be allies of the Shadow Monarch. The demon clans and the beasts were attacking the Shadow Soldiers just as fiercely as they were battling the Silver Soldiers. Was there an internal conflict between them, or had they never been on the same side to begin with? The battle raged on, the battlefield quickly becoming a sea of blood and fallen bodies. The violence seemed endless, consuming everything in its path. As the war drew toward its conclusion, only a handful of creatures remained on the blood-streaked terrain. The Shadow Monarch approached one demon, slumped against a rock, its face hidden behind a helmet. Despite the demon's weakened state, the monarch's gaze was unwavering. There was no mistaking the tension between them as they faced each other in silence. The Shadow Monarch's voice cut through the stillness, cold and commanding as he demanded answers about the demon's betrayal. The demon, however, laughed bitterly, speaking in a language that few would understand, but the Shadow Monarch clearly did. Without warning, the monarch reached out and gripped the demon's neck, lifting it effortlessly off the ground. The demon struggled, its armor groaning under the strength of the monarch's hold. Even as blood dripped from its mouth, the demon attempted to speak, despite the crushing pain. Then, something extraordinary happened. As Jinwoo watched, the demon's eyes met his own, eyes that filled him with recognition. His heart raced as he realized who the demon was. Those eyes were all too familiar. His pulse quickened as he finally understood. The demon was none other than Baran, the Demon King. Jinwoo's hands trembled as the Shadow Monarch released the lifeless body, which crumpled to the ground with a sickening thud. As the helmet clattered to the earth, Jinwoo's shock deepened. Baran's face, twisted with burning hatred, stared up at him. It was the same face he had seen in the demon's castle. But as the pieces fell into place, another revelation struck him. Baran, the Demon King, was now clad head to toe in black armor, his form completely enveloped by the same dark power that had consumed the battlefield. At some point, Jinwoo had unknowingly taken control of the Shadow Monarch's body. His heart pounded furiously, each beat echoing in his ears. Instinctively, he placed a hand on his chest, feeling its rapid rhythm. But then, something unusual caught his attention. His hand moved to the right side of his chest, where he felt another heartbeat. 2 hearts, both beating in perfect unison. He had become more aware of his heartbeat since the double dungeon incident, yet he had failed to notice this bizarre detail until now. As the realization settled in, Jinwoo's gaze dropped to the ground, his mind swirling with confusion. Before he could fully process it, shadows loomed from above. He lifted his head just in time to see 4 figures descending toward him. Angels, each possessing 6 wings, floated ominously in the air. Their presence radiated an overwhelming authority. Then, the memory ended. A soft chime echoed around him, and darkness swallowed his vision once more. As unconsciousness pulled him under, the familiar voice of the system rang out. Data retrieval is complete. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the gate, the elite squad from the Hunters Guild, led by Jongin and Jimchul, stood before a massive doorway resembling an ancient castle. The structure exuded an ominous presence, and a heavy tension filled the air. The overwhelming manner radiating from within unsettled Jongin. He exchanged a wary glance with Jimchul, silently questioning the situation. Yet Jimchul remained confident in his information. Sung Jinwoo was inside. Among the group, Cha Hai-in carefully observed their surroundings. The mana saturating the air felt foreign. It didn't belong to Jinwoo. A nagging suspicion took root in her mind. Was another force at play? The possibility of a double dungeon surfaced in her thoughts. If true, this was her opportunity to confirm the rumors. Her unspoken debt to Jinwoo pushed her forward. Jimchul's mind drifted to an earlier conversation with Jinwoo. Jinwoo had once insisted that he hadn't been the one to clear the double dungeon before. So why had he returned to this dangerous place? The question gnawed at Jimchul, fueling his suspicion that this was more than mere coincidence. Determined, the hunters pressed forward. As they stepped through the gate, they were met with a sight beyond comprehension. The vast chamber was in complete ruin. Debris littered the floor. Broken stone statues lay in shattered heaps, and massive chunks of rubble marked the aftermath of a ferocious battle. Jongin's eyes widened in disbelief, struggling to process the devastation before him. Other hunters gaped at the scene, their minds reeling. The legendary statues of God, long thought to be mere myths, had stood in this very place. A sudden, booming voice shattered the silence. The hunters snapped their attention toward its source. Towering above them, the architect stood, his gaze sweeping over the group with dark amusement. A twisted grin curled his lips as he spoke, his tone laced with malice. The hunters flinched. This creature could speak their language. Raising a single finger to his lips, the architect commanded silence. Then, in a voice that sent chills down their spines, he uttered a warning. They must not disturb the one who was resting. Jinwoo stood motionless, his form eerily still, as if lost in an eternal slumber. Jinwoo stood frozen, unaware of his surroundings. From a distance, Myung-chul recognized him instantly. Before he could utter a word, a sudden, brutal attack struck him and 2 other hunters. In a single swift motion, the architect's power tore through them, splitting 2 hunters in half. Myung-chul was gravely wounded, blood splattering across the room. Hae-in's eyes widened in panic as chaos erupted. The architect stepped forward, his voice cold and menacing, declaring that these powerful humans would serve as the perfect first offerings to the king. Myung-chul lay on the ground, blood pouring from his mouth. Yongin's desperate voice rang out as he ordered the others to heal him immediately. The healers scrambled, pouring their energy into saving him while the wounded were quickly moved to safety. Myung-chul's condition was critical, but the healers worked tirelessly, trying to stop the bleeding. Just then, the statues, once thought to be destroyed, rose again. Their cold, emotionless faces made them appear even more grotesque. The architect's voice echoed through the chamber, taunting the hunters. He promised that those who survived would witness the ultimate victory, the birth of the king. His words sent a shiver through the group, but there was no time to process the meaning. As the architect finished speaking, a red laser shot across the room. Yangon screamed a warning just in time. The hunters ducked, narrowly avoiding the deadly beam. A colossal figure loomed where the attack had originated. But Yongin was ready. He unleashed a powerful fire spell, engulfing the colossus in flames. The explosion rocked the chamber, momentarily distracting their enemies. Jongin seized the opportunity, shouting for the others to destroy the statues. Jimchul, seeing the advancing figures, leaped forward, winding his fist for a powerful strike. His specially crafted gauntlet slammed into one of the stone figures with a thunderous blow. But to his shock, the statue didn't crumble. It was far sturdier than he had anticipated. Before he could react, an explosion sent him flying to the side. Jongin, relentless, continued his assault. He quickly realized their enemies had high resistance to physical attacks. His initial fiery explosion had no effect. The flames merely washed over the statue without leaving a mark. It became clear that these creatures might also possess strong resistance to spells. Son Ki-hoon, one of the hunters, struggled to find a way to attract the statue's attention. Meanwhile, Cha-Hyen's psychokinetic spells had no impact. The statues remained completely unmoved by her efforts. Jongin quickly assessed the situation, realizing they might be running out of options. His gaze narrowed, searching for Sung Jinwoo. Here's a refined version of your passage with improved flow, pacing, and clarity. Jongin knew that waking Jinwoo was the key to turning the tide of battle. Whatever force had kept him unconscious needed to be broken, and there was no time for hesitation. Taking a risk, Jongin hurled a fireball through the air, aiming not to harm Jinwoo, but to jolt him awake. Just before the flames could reach him, the architect intervened, stepping between Jinwoo and the attack. The fireball exploded harmlessly against the architect's torso, leaving no visible damage. But for the first time, emotion flickered across its face. Rage. Lips curling back, the architect bared its teeth, furious that the hunters had dared to disturb the king's slumber. With his sword raised high, the architect advanced on Jongin, prepared to strike him down. But before the attack could land, 3 hunters surged forward, intercepting the blow with sheer force. The impact sent shockwaves rippling across the battlefield, but they held their ground, refusing to falter. One of them called out to Cha-Hyen, urging her to reach Jinwoo. Understanding the urgency, Hyen sprinted toward Jinwoo's motionless form. But the architect moved swiftly, blocking her path with an amused smirk. "Impressive," it taunted. "Show me if you can push beyond your limits." Gritting her teeth, Hyen unleashed her signature skill, sword dance. Her blade became a blur, slicing through the air in a relentless flurry of strikes. Yet the architect deflected every blow effortlessly, its laughter echoing through the chamber. Then, in a single calculated move, it slashed at her, cutting deep into her arm. Blood dripped to the ground as she staggered, dropping to one knee. The architect sneered. Predictable, it mused. The system accounts for every possibility. No matter what you do, the outcome remains the same. Futile. Boring. Jongin clenched his fists. "We have to wake Jinwoo. Now!" he shouted. Ignoring the pain in her wounded arm, Hyen lunged forward again, desperate to reach Jinwoo. The architect's smirk widened. It swung its sword in a devastating arc, the force of the strike shaking the entire battlefield and scattering debris. Yet Hyen dodged in the last instant, pushing forward with unwavering resolve. Then the architect froze. A shadow flickered beneath Hyen, something lurking within her own darkness. Though it couldn't fully manifest within the dungeon's constraints, its presence was undeniable. The architect narrowed its eyes. Impossible. How did a shadow find its way inside you? Hyen, breathing heavily, met its gaze. "Because I'm Jinwoo's friend," she declared, "and I came to bring him back." The architect let out a low, amused chuckle. How touching. Very well then. Witness his return, but at a cost. Before the monarch awakens, every last one of your companions will die. Before it could strike, a voice rang out, cutting through the battlefield like a blade. Not today. Bam! A fist crashed into the architect's face with earth-shattering force. The massive figure was sent hurtling across the chamber, slamming into a distant wall with a deafening explosion of shattered stone. Dust and debris rained down as silence gripped the battlefield. Jinwoo stood at the center of it all, his eyes burning with an intensity none had seen before. His voice, filled with fury and confusion, shattered the quiet. "What have you done to my body?" Sung Jinwoo had awakened. Here's a refined version of your passage with improved clarity, pacing, and impact. Jimchul and Cha Hye-in stood frozen in shock, unable to process what they were witnessing. Jong-in, on the other hand, let out a breath of relief, silently watching as the scene unfolded. Jinwoo strode toward the fallen architect, his expression unreadable. Without hesitation, he planted his foot firmly on its face, pressing down with an unyielding force. The architect howled, a mix of pain and disbelief contorting its features. What are you?" it demanded, its voice laced with confusion. It couldn't comprehend how Jinwoo stood before it instead of the king. How had he broken free from the Black Heart's influence? How had he even regained consciousness? Jinwoo's eyes narrowed at the mention of the Black Heart. His mind raced, piecing together the truth behind his extraordinary mana. The overwhelming power surging through him, beyond anything he had ever wielded, all traced back to that heart. Suddenly, a system notification flashed before his eyes. It reminded him of his past battle against Baran, the king of demons. The immense power of his defeated foe had recognized him as its new master. Mana, 100,000. Title, The Demon Hunter. Jinwoo studied the architect, sharp instincts revealing two undeniable truths. First, the Black Heart had no connection to the architect. Second, it certainly hadn't been created for Jinwoo's benefit. Even with the knowledge he had gathered, there were still missing pieces, secrets deliberately kept from him. His thoughts darkened as he pressed down harder, forcing the architect to speak. "You once opposed my selection as the player," Jinwoo stated coldly. "Why? What was your real plan?" The architect sneered despite its predicament, its voice dripping with malice. "You think your actions will go unnoticed? The monarchs will never allow this," it warned. Jinwoo's patience wore thin. In a single motion, he summoned every dagger from his inventory. The air crackled with energy as the blades hovered menacingly, pulsing with mana. His foot remained firmly on the architect, his gaze sharp and unforgiving. "Talk," he commanded. Yet even in its dire state, the architect chuckled darkly. "You still don't see it, do you?" It hinted at something greater, something beyond Jinwoo's understanding. Before more could be revealed, chaos erupted. Screams echoed through the lair as the other hunters reacted in terror. Jinwoo turned, his senses sharp. Something was wrong. The colossal statues that had once remained still, retreating into the shadows, had begun to move again. Their eyes glowed a menacing red as they advanced, their massive bodies radiating an ominous aura. The architect let out a low, satisfied chuckle. "You can kill me, but my puppets will continue to hunt you," it taunted. Jinwoo, however, didn't waver. He merely smiled. He saw through the architect's game. He wasn't just going to defeat it, he would destroy every last one of its creations afterward. For the first time, the architect faltered. It scrambled to respond, realizing too late that the true threat wasn't the monarchs. It was Sung Jinwoo. But Jinwoo was already ahead. He saw through the architect's bluff with chilling precision. Even if the architect perished, the system itself wouldn't collapse. The lies, the gaps in its words, Jinwoo had caught them all. The architect had underestimated him, forgetting why it had chosen him in the first place. Jinwoo had a talent for breaking the rules. Suddenly, the system pinged, again and again, but it was failing. Jinwoo had forced the architect into a corner, and the repeated notifications confirmed its desperation. Access denied. Access denied. Access denied. The architect froze. Its attempts to manipulate the system were being outright rejected. Jinwoo remained unwavering, his thoughts cold and calculated. He had come to a realization. The system and he were intertwined, bound in a way that couldn't be easily severed. If the system had made him into someone's avatar, then he would use it in ways they had never anticipated. His gaze darkened with finality. He would devour the system itself. The moment he made his decision, his blade struck. Steel tore through the architect's body, and with it, the system's illusion of invincibility shattered. Shards of flesh and metal exploded outward, red and green energy lashing through every last defense. The architect convulsed, its form breaking apart under the force of Jinwoo's relentless assault. It staggered, its face split in two, barely clinging to the last moments of its existence. And with its dying breath, it whispered a final prophecy. When the pillars of fire that hold the heavens are raised, an inevitable death will come for you. Its voice faltered. Cracks ran along its body, deepening until it finally crumbled to nothing. Jinwoo exhaled, the cold gleam in his eyes never wavering. He smirked. As you please. Outside the gate, tension ran high. The Bravery Guild stood impatiently, waiting. It had been an hour since the Hunters Guild entered the dungeon, and unease was settling in. They had assumed this was a routine C-rank dungeon. So what was taking so long? Then, the first hunters emerged. Gasps rippled through the Bravery Guild as they took in the scene. Even the elites of the Hunters Guild looked battered, their faces pale with exhaustion. Whatever had happened inside was beyond anything they had expected. Jinwoo stepped forward, his expression grim. Help us move the bodies. The Bravery Guild members stiffened. They had known the battle would be tough, but the sheer number of casualties was staggering. Quietly, they agreed, though the weight of what had transpired was only just sinking in. Jinwoo stepped through the gate, lost in thought. The system architect was gone, yet many of his questions remained unanswered. He stood in silence as Jinwoo approached, his gaze heavy with unspoken grief. 20 top-ranked hunters, Jinwoo said quietly. That's how many we lost today. Jinwoo's jaw tightened. If this had been a dungeon break, the devastation outside would have been unimaginable. Jinwoo let out a weary sigh. I called for the Hunters Guild's help when I realized how intense the mana leaking from the gate was, but I never expected this. None of us did. Jinwoo listened without a word. He knew the losses had been immense, but he also knew he had done everything possible to prevent even greater casualties. Jinwoo, still struggling to make sense of it all, glanced at Jinwoo. How did you know? How did you find the double dungeon hidden in that gate? Jinwoo's answer was simple. The dungeon called to me. Jinwoo frowned, trying to process the words. It didn't make sense. No one had ever experienced something like that. But looking at Jinwoo, at the aftermath of this impossible battle, he knew the younger hunter wasn't lying. Jinwoo remained an enigma, one Jinwoo wasn't sure he would ever truly understand. Meanwhile, Cha Hyen approached Jinwoo, concern in her eyes. You're hurt, she said softly. Jinwoo offered a small, reassuring smile. I'm fine, he replied. Just a little tired. But before he could say another word, exhaustion crashed over him like a wave. His vision blurred, his body gave out, and he collapsed. Jinwoo! Cries of alarm erupted around him. Hunters rushed to his side, calling his name, desperately trying to wake him. The scene shifts to Japan, where trucks filled with mana crystals are heading toward the S-rank gate. Hunter Yuri Orov observes this and remarks that 200,000 tons of mana crystals should suffice to power the magic circle. He then constructs a barrier around the gate, claiming it will now gather magic energy autonomously. Suddenly, Yuri detects something unusual. When asked if everything is all right, he assures that the barrier is flawless, but admits he senses a presence nearby. He calls out to whoever or whatever it is to reveal themselves, yet receives no response. A man accompanying him questions, what kind of person would be bold enough to linger around a site that could experience a dungeon break at any moment? Yuri responds, I never said it was a person. From atop a nearby building, a mysterious man observes them, commenting that Yuri has keen senses. His name is Sun Il-hwan. He notes that everything is proceeding according to a predetermined tragedy. As the military encircles the area, Kana questions Sugioto about the deployment of troops. Even though modern weapons are ineffective against monsters, Sugimoto explains that if Yuri fails, they need to stall for time so the first wave of hunters can prepare. Kana realizes the soldiers are merely sacrificial distractions. Sugioto comments that as long as they're on the front lines, they're not so different. Sugimoto's gaze remains fixed on the gate. He states, we are merely witnessing how powerless humans are against such disasters. Meanwhile, Yuri Orlov feels confident that he can handle the S-rank gate alone if everything goes well. He wishes to be known as the man who cleared an S-rank gate solo, but admits there is someone more suited for that title. He opens a bottle, preparing to drink, when a man behind him warns him that it might not be wise. Yuri responds confidently, saying he will show a spectacular performance. He takes a drink to steady his nerves. He then asks how many S-rank hunters are on standby, 15 in total. He inquires why the US didn't send any S-rank hunters for backup. The man explains that new S-rank gates have appeared elsewhere, on the east side of Maryland, as well as in England and India. As they converse, the gate begins to rupture. Meanwhile, back in Korea, Jinwoo awakens in a hospital. He sits up and sees Jinho visiting him. Jinwoo asks what happened, and Jinho starts crying, revealing that Jinwoo has been unconscious for 3 days. Jinwoo immediately inquires about the S-rank gate in Japan. The scene then shifts back to the day the dungeon break occurred. Giants emerge from the gate, along with monsters that would typically be the final boss of an A-rank dungeon, many of them. Yuri confidently deploys his mana crystal-powered barrier to contain the monsters. The creatures try to break free, but the barrier holds firm. Yuri smiles, believing that monsters from mere A-rank gates cannot breach it. However, his confidence turns to horror when he notices a gigantic monster approaching. With a single swing of its weapon, the creature slices through the barrier effortlessly. The story then transitions to the present. Eugene Ho explains to Sun Jinwoo all the recent incidents that occurred while he was unconscious. Meanwhile, Chairman Yu Yong-han wakes up in his office. He asks his secretary how long he's been asleep. The secretary replies, 23 hours. They had planned to take him to the hospital if he hadn't woken up after 24 hours, as he had instructed. The secretary then presents him with documents about the person who was cured of eternal slumber. He informs him that the patient appears to be Hunter Seung Jinwoo's mother. Upon hearing this, Yu Yong-han begins to suspect that Sun Jinwoo might possess the ability to cure eternal sleep. Just then, someone arrives to meet him. As the woman steps into the room, she assesses Jinwoo's condition and asks how long he has been like this. Meanwhile, back in Japan, the aftermath of the dungeon break unfolds dramatically. Hunter Yuri Orlov is devoured entirely by one of the giants. The military's efforts to halt the advancing monsters prove futile, as their weapons have no effect against creatures summoned from an S-rank gate. Witnessing the destruction, Japan's Hunter Association chairman Matsumoto Shigo orders the remaining S-rank hunters to intervene and stop the giants from advancing further. They charge toward the monsters, attempting to blind them by targeting their eyes, but the giants are surprisingly swift, dodging their attacks with ease. Hunter Kai Teada, watching in disbelief, wonders aloud how such enormous beings can move so quickly. Meanwhile, in Korea, Sun Jinwoo observes footage of the chaos from his room. He contemplates that, if things continue as they are, the entire Asian continent could face disaster, reminiscent of the Jeju Island raid. He begins to consider heading to Japan himself to handle the crisis personally. Suddenly, from behind, he hears a voice. It's his younger sister, Sunjana. She warns him not to go. Surprised, Jinwoo asks what she means. She confesses she knows he's planning to leave. Jinwoo assures her he isn't going anywhere, explaining he's just been working too hard lately and needs some rest. He reassures her not to worry. Later, we see Jinwoo sitting outside in a park. He summons Boeru and asks about his sister's condition. Boeru reports that there's nothing abnormal about her behavior. However, Jinwoo suspects she might be suffering from trauma. She had never tried to stop him from going on a raid before, except during his very first one 4 years ago. He wonders what he should do to help her. As he walks, a car pulls up in front of him. Fast forward, Jinwoo is now inside the office of Eugene Construction Guild, where CEO Yum Yong-han greets him and introduces himself. He places a blank check on the table saying, "I'm not arrogant enough to believe money can't buy anything, especially when speaking to an S-rank hunter. Please consider this a token of my sincerity." Jinwoo senses that whatever Yum Yong-han wants to discuss is confidential, not just a simple guild invitation. He asks, "What do you want to buy from me?" Yum Yong-han reveals that he suffers from the same illness that afflicted Jinwoo's mother, eternal slumber. Jinwoo inquires whether Eugene Ho, his son, knows about this. Mung Han responds that, aside from his physician, only 3 people are aware of his condition. He explains that after exhaustive searches for a cure, he discovered that Jinwoo's mother was the only person ever to recover from it. He believes this isn't a coincidence and pleads for Jinwoo's help, promising he will never forget his kindness. Hearing this, Jinwoo reflects on his sister, realizing she may also need a potion or treatment to heal her trauma. Flash to Japan, where reporters fly over the devastated city, documenting the widespread destruction caused by the dungeon break. One reporter expresses concern, asking what would happen if the giants decide to attack the remaining population. Another reassures them that they are safe as long as they keep their distance. Multiple researchers have confirmed this, so it is considered reliable. The cameras focus on the giant leader, the largest among the 30, who is either waiting for someone or simply guarding the gate, while the other giants are scattered across the region. Only 2 of these giants have been defeated over the past 2 days. If they aren't stopped soon, the entire world could be at risk. Back in Korea, at Jinwoo's office, Eugene Ho is shocked to learn that Jinwoo plans to go to Japan. He tries to dissuade him, warning, "This situation is different from the Jeju Island raid. The monsters are much more dangerous and abnormally large." Jinwoo responds that if he succeeds, the Azin Guild's reputation will skyrocket worldwide. Still, he admits that even Jinho, who always trusted him, is now worried. Jinho eventually agrees, but only on the condition that they go to Japan together. He then brings up something he's noticed: the Red Gate incident, the Jeju Island raid, and the recent double dungeon all shared a common factor. The one thing missing from each event was Jinho's involvement. He admits that the only thing he can truly take pride in is standing by Jinwoo's side. It's a bit embarrassing, he says, but he's proud of him. Jinwoo smiles and quips, "That's not something I'd expect from a millionaire's son." Jinho responds with trust, telling Jinwoo that if it's safe for him, then it's safe for Jinho too. Jinwoo then stands up, feigning a change of heart. "I was just joking," he says. "Why would I go to Japan right now?" He tells Jinho to head home. As Jinwoo walks away, he begins pondering the architect from the double dungeon, someone who might be on his level. That realization reminds him there are still many beings stronger than him out there. The world is vast. When he arrives home, he's greeted by his mother. During dinner, he asks about Jenna. His mother responds that Jenna said she wasn't hungry. Jinwoo then reflects on Yum Yong-han, Jinho's father, and his claim to suffer from eternal slumber. He admits he doesn't truly understand who Yum Yong-han is, or if he's genuinely afflicted. With limited holy water of life remaining, Jinwoo knows he must use it wisely. Once dinner is over, he tells his mother he's going out for a while. He recognizes there are people stronger than him, but as long as he continues to grow, he needs to be on the battlefield to become stronger. Before leaving, Jinwoo visits Jenna in her room. "We need to talk," he says softly. Sitting beside her, he hesitates, searching for where to begin. He confesses that he almost died recently. Seeing no reaction from her, he continues, "I'm always in dangerous situations, but this time was different." He explains, "I really thought I'd die, but I made it out alive, and I'm grateful for every time I come back home." He pats her head gently and promises that he will return this time as well. He thanks her for stopping him from leaving earlier. Tears well up in Jenna's eyes as she says, "You would have left anyway." Jinwoo smiles warmly and replies, "But I'll come back." Fast forward to a press conference held by Chairman Gohei regarding the Japanese dungeon break. Jinwoo has decided to go there himself to confront the S-rank gate. At the airport, just as Jinwoo is about to depart, he notices something, and it's Jinho, who has somehow managed to follow him despite his efforts to stop him. Recognizing there's no other choice, Jinwoo reluctantly agrees. Together, they prepare to board the plane, facing the uncertain dangers awaiting them in Japan. The scene shifts to Japan, where the military is desperately trying to rescue survivors amid the chaos. A soldier urges civilians, "There's only room for 3 or 4 more people. Don't waste time worrying about those who might not make it. Find cover. If you stay, you'll die." As he looks up, he spots the giants closing in. The soldiers open fire, but their weapons are ineffective against the monsters. Just as a giant reaches toward a group of civilians, a massive trident pierces its chest, knocking it several blocks away. The lifeless giant crashes among the debris, and the soldiers stare in disbelief. Suddenly, they notice another figure, one that's protecting them. It's son Jinwoo, arriving just in time. Rocks begin falling from collapsing buildings, flying straight at the civilians. Jinho arrives, shielding them with his large shield. He then tells Jinwoo he will stay behind to help the survivors escape. Hearing this, Jinwoo prepares to confront all the monsters nearby. Alongside Jima, he charges forward. Jima's immense strength quickly dispatches multiple enemies. Seeing this, Jinwoo leaps into the fray, slicing a giant in half with a single dagger swing. The scene shifts to the United States, where hunters in the Scavenger Guild discuss Jinwoo's actions in Japan. One comments that Lady Selna didn't enhance Jinwoo's powers further. Another dismisses him, saying that even though he's reawakened, every hunter has limits, and Jinwoo will eventually die at this level. They start betting on how long he'll last in the current raid. Suddenly, a voice interrupts from behind. Thomas Andre, the guildmaster. He confidently states he'd wager the entire guild building that Jinwoo will survive. He then warns them to focus more on the S-rank gate that just appeared in their territory. The dungeon break is happening tomorrow, and he questions how many of them will make it through. Looking out the window, he remarks that Japan's chaos might have been entertaining, but tomorrow's battle promises to be even more so. Back in Japan, live footage broadcasts the destruction across the city. A giant screams as Aunt Kingbu's minions devour it alive. Another giant chases a frightened girl. Just as the monster is about to catch her, a shadowy figure appears and slices off its hand. It's Igris, saving the girl. As the giant reels in pain, it fails to notice Iron charging at it. Iron delivers a devastating blow to the monster's head, slamming it into the ground. Standing atop the fallen beast, Iron looks victorious. Watching this chaos unfold, Igris sighs. Meanwhile, Jinwoo observes the ongoing chaos from a distance. Watching Iron in action, he comments that Iron must be excited now that he's been upgraded. He feels relieved to see him performing so well. A Japanese soldier then approaches, offering thanks to Jinwoo. Not understanding Japanese, Jinwoo simply gives him a thumbs up and says, "You good, brave soldier." He then requests that Jinho assist with the remaining evacuation efforts. Once everyone has evacuated, Jinwoo stands before the fallen giant's corpse. Using shadow extraction, he prepares to add it to his growing army of shadow soldiers. At the Hunter Association headquarters in Japan, officials inform Chairman Matsumoto Shigo that the city is gradually being reclaimed from the giants. Hearing this, Matsumoto reflects that Guto Ryuji might not have been mistaken. He recalls the eyes he saw at the airport, eyes that seemed to belong to a hunter on another level. Having encountered countless hunters before, Matsumoto recognizes that Sun Jinwoo stands apart, unmatched. He remembers their first meeting at the airport when Jinwoo and Yujinho arrived in Japan. Matsumoto greeted them and explained that the giants were advancing toward Osaka. He asked Jinwoo to focus on defending the city, assuming that even someone as powerful as him couldn't possibly take down all the giants alone. While Jinwoo handled the city's defense, Matsumoto planned to seek support from other nations. But to their surprise, Jinwoo declined the offer, boldly stating he would defeat all the giants himself. The scene shifts to Jinwoo, who is contemplating names for his newly created shadow soldiers. He decides to keep it simple and assigns them numbers 1 through 5. As he finishes naming them, Boo appears and informs him that another enemy has been eliminated. Jinwoo then names that one number 6. Before moving on, he tells Jinho to rest for now. Jinwoo reflects that things have been relatively easy so far, but he knows this is only the beginning. His shadow soldiers continue sweeping through the country, annihilating remaining giants. These summoned beings are formidable. Even after being defeated, they can heal themselves, making them nearly unstoppable. However, the recent dungeon break at the S-rank gate has caused other portals to open, releasing lower-tier monsters that are also causing chaos. This has made simultaneous evacuation and suppression efforts extremely challenging. Fast forward 7 days, Jinwoo and Jinho are searching for remaining survivors and giants across the city. Eventually, they arrive before the massive leader of the giants, who is stationed near the gate. Witnessing the size and destruction around them, Jinho sighs and mutters that everything is ruined. Suddenly, they hear a familiar voice, Miss Hoshino Hankawa, the interpreter who previously traveled to Korea with Goto Ryuji. Jinwoo asks her about the whereabouts of other hunters, but she explains that she is the only one left in Tokyo. The others have either been killed or scattered. She adds that the giants have dispersed across the country, but thanks to Jinwoo, most have already been eradicated. Now, the remaining giants are being dealt with by hunters and Jinwoo's shadow soldiers. Jinwoo states that only one remains, the giant guarding the gate. Looking around at the devastated city, he is reminded of the demon castle. He begins to wonder, was this destruction a model? Did the system architect design the demon castle to reflect a possible future? But then he considers that the architect is already dead, and he hasn't received any messages or visions since. Perhaps that was the architect's true body, and he was communicating through that form. Determined to prevent that bleak future from becoming reality, Jinwoo trains tirelessly to wield power unrivaled by anyone else. Turning to Hankawa, he declares that they are ready to move out. She informs him that the other hunters have not yet arrived, but Jinwoo confidently assures her they have. Meanwhile, Kino grumbles about how frustrating everything is, while Minoru urges her to be grateful. They're alive, at least. Frustrated, Hankawa vents her irritation. Jinwoo and his shadow army are pushing forward, dominating giants that even Japanese hunters couldn't approach. It feels like they're only here to clean up the leftovers, which she finds infuriating. As she speaks, Jinwoo's shadow army begins returning to him, shadows thickening the air around them. Finally, Boo appears and kneels before Jinwoo. Jinwoo asks, "Is it done?" Then praises his minion. He orders Jinho to escort Hankawa to safety. Once they depart, Jinwoo begins using shadow extraction on the corpses of fallen giants, fueling his army with towering shadow versions of the monsters. As his forces grow in number and strength, he issues a final command. All soldiers charge towards the last giant guarding the S-rank gate. When the signal is given, his summoned shadows surge forward while Jinwoo observes from a distance. The giant, sensing the oncoming threat, roars and unleashes a powerful monowave. Jinwoo's eyes widen in shock as he watches it cut through countless shadow soldiers with ease. He observes the battle and reflects that the creature possesses immense strength, slaughtering 100 shadows with a single swing. He notes its overwhelming magical power, feeling a visceral urge to flee from the oppressive, intense pressure it exudes. He considers only two ways to escape such a feeling: run and forget, or eliminate the source entirely. Despite being vastly outnumbered, the giant stands firm. Its defenses are formidable, shadows cannot approach, and mana-based attacks seem ineffective. At one point, it casually catches a fireball with its bare hand, continuing to tear through the attacking shadows. When insect-type shadows swarm its feet, the giant crushes them effortlessly. Enraged, Boo prepares to join the fight, but Jinwoo halts him, sensing that the moment isn't right yet. He realizes he has enough mana to keep fighting and must press on until he uncovers the giant's weakness. He begins regenerating fallen shadow soldiers, but even their solid blows cause no visible damage. Jinwoo deduces that the creature's magic power acts like an armor, protecting its body from physical attacks. However, he recalls that the giant flinched and blocked when a fireball nearly struck its face, providing a crucial clue. He summons Kazel and orders his strongest soldiers, Biru and Igris, into battle. Boo speeds toward the creature's face, aiming for its eye, but the giant dodges skillfully. Meanwhile, Igris, riding Kazel, attacks from the air using lightning magic, firing a beam at the giant's face, which it narrowly evades. Jinwoo deduces that the giant's weak spot is its face, as its lower body is shielded by mana. The creature retaliates by striking Kazel, forcing the wyvern to retreat. Just as it seems to gain the upper hand, Igor charges straight for the giant's face. It blocks the attack, but this distraction gives Jinwoo an opening. Seizing the moment, Jinwoo lands a powerful blow that injures the giant, causing it to scream in pain. Boo follows up with another assault, keeping the creature distracted. Jinwoo then summons his strongest daggers and, with the ruler's authority, begins attacking the face directly. From a distance, Jinho and Hankawa watch in awe. Hankawa remarks that this no longer looks like a battle between hunters and monsters. It's more like a clash of monsters against monsters. Back in the fight, Jinwoo uses a violent slash to destroy one of the giant's eyes. As the creature howls in agony, he signals to Boo, who enters the giant's skull through the eye socket. Jinwoo continues attacking from the outside while Boo ravages it from within. The giant begins bleeding profusely and eventually collapses to the ground. A notification pops up. You have defeated the enemy.